Growing up, I was obsessed with playing games on my PlayStation 2. Sonic Heroes was always my favourite, but on occasion I'd dabble outside the realms of Sonic the Hedgehog and into worlds hitherto unknown. Some shooter games here and there, Red Faction and Half-Life both stand out as sort of blurry, vague PS2 memories of mine, as well as a few other games. But one genre of game that was notably missing from my PlayStation 2 was that of the RPG, where I think the closest thing we really had to that was Kingdom Hearts, which, I mean kinda. Outside of the PlayStation 2, I was also playing games on the family computer. The Sims, Roller Coaster Tycoon and Dungeon Keeper are some more memorable ones that I look back on fondly. But none of them quite as fondly as I look back on a little game called RuneScape. As a young lad, I didn't really know any better when it came to RPGs. From what I had thus far played, RuneScape was the only thing I knew of that really had many of its definitive features to me. Leveling and progression, a rich and detailed fantasy world, wonderful and whimsical characters. All of these features were pretty much unique to RuneScape as far as I was aware. It wasn't until one day when my brother returned home with a boxed copy of Oblivion for the PC that my eyes were opened to a world of video games that had evaded my gaze. Over the years, I've dibbled and dabbled in RPGs from all over, from Baldur's Gate to Neverwinter Nights, from Fable to Two Worlds, from Skyrim to The Outer Worlds, and from The Witcher to Dragon Age. But there are two RPG series that caught my attention the most. Two franchises I hold near and dear to my heart: Fallout and Mass Effect. One day I may talk more about the Fallout franchise and how it evolved from a quirky and small isometric adventure to a massive open-world first-person shooter, and also maybe a survival game sometimes, but the more literate among you may have noticed that, I intend today to talk about Mass Effect. More specifically the first Mass Effect game, Mass Effect 1, also known as Mass Effect. Released on November 16th in the human year 2007 AD, the first Mass Effect game was pretty much an instant hit for developer BioWare. Prior to this, BioWare were notable for their much beloved work in other classic RPGs, such as the aforementioned Baldur's Gate and its sequel, Baldur's Gate 2: Shadows of Am, as well as the equally aforementioned first Neverwinter Nights game, and the not as of yet mentioned first Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, both of which would also have sequels made by the tangentially aforementioned Fallout New Vegas developers Obsidian. And trust me, I would at some point love to talk about all of these games and franchises, as I think each and every one of them is frankly a gem. But the important thing to take away from all of this is that these developers had credentials in RPG genres, and even in sci-fi games themselves. Mass Effect, however, was intending to move away from slower or more tactical, stat-driven combat like many of their previous games, and to instead focus on fast-paced shooting inspired by third-person shooter games comparable to something like Gears of War. Mass Effect as a whole was pretty ambitious, with a whole new sci-fi story and a bizarre and exciting galaxy where humans were the newcomers, the underdogs, and also the only ones who could save everything. All of this footage was recorded on the Legendary Edition re-release of the game, which was a 2021 remaster of the entire original Mass Effect trilogy. In terms of story and structure, the game is ultimately the same, but it is worth noting that there are a few pretty significant changes to this first game. The gameplay has been changed up drastically. The game looks and generally runs a lot better and a lot more in line with the other games, especially on PC. And most importantly, one piece of downloadable content is completely absent from the game. I'll talk about all of this stuff when it comes to it, fret not. I just figured I'd address the graphical changes that may be visible to the more astute viewer. But now, Mass Effect. The game starts as many do, by pressing the start button. After a short and charming little animation, you are presented with the most powerful choice a gamer can ever be presented with. Are you a boy? Or are you a girl? Well, as you can no doubt tell from my voice, the only natural choice was for me to pick the female option, Jane Shepard, and begin my journey henceforth. Except wrong, Jane Shepard is a stupid name. I called her Saoirse Shepard, after the actress Saoirse Ronan. At this point the game lets you do a bunch of customization if you want, but I just sort of stuck as closely as possible to the default look while still being able to change my class and origin. These are the kinds of options a fair few RPGs give you the option of applying to your character, and they usually serve similar functions across the board. Your origin is covered first, with the creation menu asking you for your pre-service history and your psychological profile. Where did Saoirse Shepard come from? Who is she?
I'd like to know who you are.
And what did she do to advance her career to the point of becoming a commander in the Navy? What kind of moral compass does she have? Your pre-service history boils down to 3 choices that relate to how and why you joined the military: Spacer, Colonist, or Earthborn. In terms of gameplay, this is basically good, neutral, or naughty. I opted to be a Spacer because first and foremost, I like the idea of growing up in and around space, and secondly, I like the idea of joining the military because you just really love your mum. Psychological profile is more specific to how your career is noteworthy, with the options of being a sole survivor who overcame adversity to survive, a war hero who was willing to risk it all to defeat their enemies, or just a ruthless weirdo who loves killing. I opted for war hero as I think this one is probably the most logical one to be offered the terms that lead to the trilogy unfolding, and feels like the one most befitting of a hero out to save the galaxy. The way the game handles classes is a little bit more self-explanatory, as the next option afforded to you is your specialisation. These are your bog standard sort of, do you use weapons or are you a bit more mystical and weird? This would usually be where you would choose to be a mage or a thief or what have you, but as this is a sci-fi setting, you are instead given 6 choices, which have varying levels of involvement in either one or two of the 3 aspects that define who the character is in question: combat, tech, and biotics. Combat is your basic guns, bigger guns, and the occasional explosive fired from a gun. Tech is unsurprisingly more technical. Hacking, engineering, and shutting down electricity are all covered by tech, which, as one might imagine, is pretty useful in a setting where things are powered by electricity and computers. And then there's biotics. Without going into too much detail, this is the Force. If you've ever seen a Star Wars movie or show, or just generally heard the word Star Wars before, you probably have a pretty solid understanding of the bare bones concepts of biotic abilities. Wacky space magic that allows you to pull, push, throw, shield, and sometimes even explode your enemies. If there's one thing you should know about me, it's that as much as I appreciate a good gun here and there, I prefer to keep things firmly in the realms of wacky as much as possible. And as such, I elected to go for the Sentinel specialisation. This is the option that really gives you the best of both worlds when it comes to whimsy, with a combined double whammy of tech and biotics to allow you to do a bit of hacking and a bit of tossing. But you can pretty much only use light armour and pistols, so while you get to have really fun abilities, you're also reliant on being a little bit of a coward. And now, all that's left to do is to hit accept. The game starts as many do, with an introductory tutorial mission. A mission that sets up the stakes, the general plot of who is good and who is bad, introduces a good chunk of mechanics and characters, and does a bit of world building to boot. You've played tutorials, I've played tutorials, some are good, some are bad. I think the best tutorial is one that sort of seamlessly ties itself into the experience that you're about to play throughout the whole game, and makes itself interesting enough and memorable enough to either make you learn the mechanics naturally, or to explain things well enough through well-written dialogue, contextual clues, or a compelling accompanying narrative. This accompanying narrative is the first thing Mass Effect does its best at to immediately acclimate you to the experience ahead without spilling all of its proverbial beans too fast too quick. You're introduced to a few characters in addition to Shepard, who is at this point established to be a commander in the Alliance military/navy. The terms are a little wishy-washy, but in general it's the Space Army. The first cutscene that plays introduces Shepard in addition to the pilot of the ship that she is aboard, a man named Joker. The ship is seen approaching some sort of large space vessel, and zooms off into space at ridiculous speed. You're then given a more proper introduction to Joker, as well as a man named Kaidan and a tall alien man named Nihilus. Immediately a few things are established. Joker isn't necessarily a fan of Nihilus, but Kaidan seems more welcoming of him. Nihilus is also referred to as something called a Spectre, but things are left pretty vague other than establishing that Joker and Kaidan's banter, and the general notion that things are a bit afoot on this mission, as well as tutorialing me on how the dialogue works. Our banter is broken up by a man named Anderson requesting to meet with Shepard, accompanied by the soothing and dulcet tones of Keith David, the voice actor of Keith David in Saints Row 4.
Tell Commander Shepard to meet me in the comm room for a debriefing.
At this point I'm actually allowed a bit more control with the ability to move around the ship, talk to who I want, and get a feel for what sort of personalities are around me. I get to chat with a few characters like Engineer Adams, Dr. Chakwa, Private Jenkins, and Navigator Presley. Ultimately though, nothing particularly fruitful comes from attempting to engage these characters in dialogue at this part. It's a little bit of world building and some personality establishment, but it's clear that I'm needed elsewhere, so it's on to have a little chat with Anderson and Nihilus. It's here that the concept of who the Spectres are is established a little bit further, and Shepard is informed that she is the first human candidate for the Spectres, with this mission to a small colony on a planet named Eden Prime to collect a mysterious beacon being a sort of trial run to see if she's got what it takes, with Nihilus being there to review her progress. But naturally, things are awry on the surface of Eden Prime. A soldier contacts the ship requesting backup from a seeming invasion, and a spooky, ominous Cthulhu ship is seen descending on the planet. With nobody else around to help with the issue, Nihilus decides that this small trial run is going to be more of a real mission with much larger stakes. On the one hand, well, that'll certainly help with the candidacy, but on the other, well, that does look pretty creepy. The ship flies in and plunks Shepard down with the support of the aforementioned Kaidan and Jenkins, with Nihilus going off on his own to scout up ahead. Now that our two besties are with us, it's time to... Oh well, Shepard and Kaidan at the very least are still kicking, so we move on up ahead and meet up with a woman we briefly saw in the Distress video. Ashley Williams, but not quite like the Evil Dead guy. Move on up, help out some colonists, kill some robots, a bit of breaking and entering, disarm some bombs, standard soldier stuff all around really. 3 of us are a squad now, and we're awesome. Primarily, the game is played from this third-person over-the-shoulder view when in a mission, with the option to activate your abilities. In my case, my tech or biotic abilities that I'm able to level up, all in the name of making combat flow more efficiently. Older RPGs might have allowed you to take full control of your buddies, but Mass Effect leaves it mostly up to the AI to handle their own business. Kaidan, much like my Shepard, is a sentinel armed with various tech and biotic abilities I can utilise to further my own abilities. Ashley, on the other hand, loves guns. Like, goodness gracious, she just loves to kill and blow stuff up. This gives them both utilities that make them worth considering in various situations, considerations that become considerably more worth considering once other companions come into the mix. But that's getting too far ahead of ourselves, and we will talk about companions and gameplay later. For now, let's see what our good buddy Nihilus is up to.
I've got it under control.
Uh-oh. This guy is introduced to us as Saren, another Spectre from the same species as Nihilus, but unlike Nihilus, well, he's a bit of a baddie, working with the robot Cthulhu ship and the robots that turn people into robo-zombies, and that's no good.
Can we get much higher?
Unfortunately for Saren, Kaidan decides to reach out and grab the beacon you were originally sent here to investigate, and narrowly avoids receiving severe brain trauma when Shepard decides to reward his curiosity with a swift shove and taking the brunt of whatever this beacon is.
Can we get much higher?
As Shepard recovers from her mild brain trauma caused from touching the beacon, the rest of the crew of the ship, including Ashley, who is now hopped aboard to help you out, take her to something called the Citadel, with the intention of finding more information on what happened, as well as to inform people of Saren's naughtiness. Overall, it's a really effective first mission in easing you into the game mechanics, with a few varied scenarios thrown at you and a lot of interesting narrative hooks that get you invested in the base story, while also leaving you scratching your head and thinking, well, what the heck are those aliens? What's a Citadel? What are those robots? What was the weird space station from the first cutscene? And other such questions that get a first-time player feeling curious, inquisitive, and possibly scared. So, well, I guess now is as good a time as any to open up the old worm can and root around for answers to the questions, what is the story of Mass Effect? So I just want to preface this deep dive into the background and lore by stating that some aspects that don't become relevant until Mass Effect 2 and 3 are going to be largely ignored here. Talking about something like the lore pertinent to the Leviathan DLC for Mass Effect 3 is kind of redundant until it becomes time to talk about the Leviathan DLC for Mass Effect 3, and likewise it could somewhat ruin a lot of the tension to fully and instantly explain what the robot Cthulhu is, when that is one of the overarching narrative hooks of the game. Other lore snippets and information will be explained and expanded upon in due course. This is simply an overview of the events that lead to all the weird and wonderful creatures you meet upon arrival to this Citadel location that Shepard was introduced to. And so, with that little preamble out the way, let's talk about some history. In the human year 580 BC, or thereabouts, faster-than-light technology is discovered and or invented by an all-female species of blue alien women with tentacle hair called the Asari. They begin to roam around the cosmos all willy-nilly, discovering all sorts of wondrous sights and locations, travelling around by slingshotting their way from star system to star system, utilising giant space stations called Mass Effect relays. These relays create an interconnected interplanetary motorway system that allows one to travel betwixt the stars of the Milky Way galaxy and land on and explore planets. One such relay was already introduced to us when Joker sent us slingshotting through space to arrive at Eden Prime, and is still the primary and indeed only method of travelling the cosmos that anyone in the galaxy is as of present aware. In their jovial japes and jaunts around the galaxy, the Asari soon discover an even bigger giant space station that can't fling ships around the galaxy, but is instead a static, gigantic, and if I may be quite frank, beautifully designed thing that is just hovering around up in space. Like Rome, all relays seem to lead here, and thus the Asari decide to explore further. Fast forward 60 or so human years, and a race of lizard people who look like Paul from the movie Paul arrive at the space station, now named the Citadel by its constituent Asari populace, and formal diplomatic relations between the two species are formed. The two alien races shortly thereafter get to work forming the Grand Citadel Council to preside over their allied efforts to explore and colonize space. While the peace is somewhat rocky with a few diplomatic incidents hither and thither, they ultimately get along quite well with scientific pursuits, the study of biotics, and the desire to explore driving them. There's just one question though. Who made the Citadel? And the relays for that matter? The Asari didn't make it, and, well, these new Solarians certainly didn't help make it either. In approximately the human year 68,000 BC, faster-than-light technology is discovered and or invented by a powerful and mysterious warrior race called the Protheans. These Protheans are completely absent from the galaxy as a whole by the time the Asari and Solarians start exploring space, but many remnants of their technology, culture and memories are viewed in a number of places that are still present. The Mass Effect relays and the Citadel itself are both believed to have been crafted by these mysterious Protheans. Entire cities and ruins are discovered on several planets, and more importantly of all, are the mysterious beacons found across the galaxy that are known to cause hallucinations in women voiced by Jennifer Hale. In the human year 300 BC, give or take, a species of suited and booted asthmatic space dwarves rock up at the Citadel, introducing themselves as the Volus. There are now three flavours of alien present aboard the Citadel at this time. With scientific pursuits well underway and a baseline government established, it's time to get down to business. The Citadel Council and the Volus, who are not invited to have a chair at the big boy table, establish a standardized galactic currency in the form of the creatively named credit, a form of currency that you've never seen in any other sci-fi setting. As a thank you, the Volus are given a permanent seat at the kiddie table in the form of the establishment of an embassy on the Citadel. Fortunately, I suppose, the Volus aren't alone at the kiddie table for too long when the disappointingly unbespectacled Batarians show up to the Citadel and are allowed to establish an embassy of their own, and they didn't even have to create an entire monetary system for it. It's a veritable age of discovery for the Citadel as new, wacky spacefaring races start appearing across the galaxy faster than illicit games on the Steam storefront. First up, we have the Elcor, sort of quadrupedal and vaguely elephantesque. These handsome buggers are adorned with vertical lip slats and communicate so poorly through speech that they tend to outwardly state the intended tone of the message that they are about to relay prior to speaking to avoid any potential awkward moments or mixed signals. It's also reported they stink to high heaven and use this as a method of communication, but since no matter how hard I sniff my monitor I can't quite seem to catch a whiff of that desirable Elcor musk, I'll personally agree that their clarifying tonal statements suffice as a method of communication. Next up we have... Okay, alright, this one's a joke, right? I mean, jellyfish people? Okay, right, so these guys are the Hanar. They hover around using biotics to keep themselves afloat, because they are aquatic creatures that can't walk or really survive that well outside of the water. They speak in the third person and glow when they speak, and ultimately just look really weird. I personally think these guys are fantastic and hilarious and have a very distinct and alien feel to them. They look awesome, but good golly, the internet cannot be trusted with such a potentacled beast that we shall swiftly move on. The Quarians. The most humanoid-looking species on the Citadel, prior to the humans of course, the Quarians are oft described as beautiful and pale creatures with an affinity and high degree of knowledge in regards to engineering and computing challenges. Their homeworld is so beautiful and serene that the Quarians were unfortunately blessed with a pretty poor immune system that makes it so they're safest wearing specialised hazmat suits when interacting with other species. Over time, these suits became so ingrained in Quarian culture that they started adorning them with symbols and doodads that represented heritage, status and wealth, and many Quarians began wearing the suits even outside of diplomatic missions, which, while giving a distinct and fascinating appearance to the Quarians, also led to their pitiful immune system worsening even further over time and necessitating the use of the suits even more. And then there were 7. The Asari, Solarians, Volus, Praetorians, Elcor, Hanar and Quarians were all residents of the Citadel and all lived in relative harmony, with the Asari and Solarians as the council and all 5 of the other races with their embassies. Oh, do you hear that? Well, that sound can only mean one thing. It's wartime. In the human year 1, just 1, a regular and uninteresting expedition of discovery through a Mass Effect relay becomes exceptionally irregular and interesting when they expeditedly discover a Mass Effect relay harbouring an exceptional quantity of gigantic cow-sized insects called the Rachni. While there were no doubt skirmishes and scuffles to be had when the other races arrived at the Citadel, eventually the Council was able to open up discussions and peace prevailed. The Rachni, as an ant-like species that religiously obey their various Rachni queens, were unopened to discussion, and war prevailed. The Rachni Wars had begun. The hostile Rachni warred their way across the relays, destroying any spaceships, any colonies, and any people they were able to get their not hands on. This had gone on for like 70 years by now, and the Citadel were exhausted of the constant warring that these belligerent bugs bothered them with. Drastic times called for drastic measures and whatnot, and so a scheme was schemed by the Solarians to contact a new species of aliens that the Council had been keeping their various peepers upon as of late. In the human year 80 AD, a species of hardy dinosaur people known for their wanton destruction and overactive libidos were uplifted from their primitive society, a society that was the direct result of a self-inflicted global nuclear annihilation, mind you, and given spaceships and guns by the Council, who proceeded to point them in the direction of the Rachni and told them to start blasting. And blast they did, as over the next 200 or so years these Krogans systematically made their way across the galaxy, landing down on planets and gunning their way into the nests before eradicating the Rachni Queen and any and all eggs. This cycle continued over and over and over until the human year 300 AD, where the Rachni were declared extinct by the Council, and the Krogan were given a brand spanking new homeworld with 100% less nuclear winter. I don't want to go too much into the varied biologies of the species of the Mass Effect universe too much. That's a whole confusing and complicated landmine of oddities and fascinating if not sometimes disgusting lore snippets that are ultimately unimportant to the overall plot of the games unless stated otherwise at a later date. That said, I do very briefly want to talk about the Krogan because it's quite important. The Krogan female lays around 1,000 fertilized eggs per year. And yeah, they lay eggs by the way, with Krogan children maturing into adults in only a few short years. They're massive at about 7 feet tall, albeit usually hunched over, with large humps that store fluids and nutrients that can sustain them for a long time. They're resistant to most hazards like toxins, radiation and extreme temperatures, and they live for upwards of 1,000 years, assuming there are no unforeseen circumstances. Given an entirely brand spanking new, unsullied planet to populate, the Krogan population skyrocketed over and over, with them requiring new worlds to colonize at a frequent rate. It was during this time that the first Spectre was actually appointed, with the intention of having a secretive branch of agents answering directly to the Council to monitor and potentially deal with impending threats to the peace of the galaxy. And just in time too, because it's wartime. In the human year 700 AD, the Krogan have colonised so many planets but still keep plopping out babies at such an alarming rate that they've once again run out of space. Unsatisfied with the Citadel's hands-off approach to their colonization efforts and feeling distinctly unrewarded for their efforts in saving the galaxy, many of the Krogan warlords and veterans of the Vakni Wars take matters into their own hands and start annexing territories from Citadel space. While they had mostly been placated in their boat pushing, the Asari decided enough was enough when the Krogan tried to bully them out of one of their already established colonies, and the Spectres were deployed to dismantle the oppressive Krogan establishment board by board. The Krogan rebellions had begun. Some methods are tried and true, so the Council elected that nothing could possibly go wrong by getting someone else to fight their battles once again. You see, before the Asari ever even discovered the Citadel, a familiar-looking species called the Turians had been rocking out in other parts of the galaxy hitherto unexplored by the races of the Citadel. Their colonies had spread far and wide, with spaceships more powerful than more or less anything that the Council had come up with, and having fought a few civil wars amongst themselves by this point, they were experts at using them. The Council decided that times were dire enough to officially make contact with the Turians, begging them for help in defeating the Krogans. In land battles, the Krogan would always win, but by taking the battle to space, the tides were able to turn. The Krogans responded swiftly with a little bit of war crime, and the Turians are miffed. They secretly developed the biggest and baddest war crime of all in conjunction with the Solarians, the Genophage, a devastating bioweapon that effectively neuters the absurd Krogan birth rates by causing many of the Krogan to die in stillbirth, and many eggs never developing at all. Their entire DNA is effectively tampered with to disable counteracting the Genophage, and their population starts to drastically decline. Their morale shattered, the Krogans surrender around 90 years after the deployment of the Genophage and, by the human year 800 AD, they agree to the peace terms laid out by the Turians. As a result, the Council draws up a list of do's and don'ts when it comes to warfare and relations that inhibit further escalation of events happening in the future. With peace more or less achieved, the Turians are invited to have the third seat on the Council for their instrumental help in the Krogan rebellions. The Council, now consisting of the Asari, Solarians and Turians, is set in stone at this point, and remains this way all the way up to the start of the games. In the human year 1858 AD, the Quarians record something revolutionary for the first time. While they didn't know it yet, in 15 years what they made note of would change everything for their species going forwards. Artificial intelligence. A workforce of hyper-intelligent worker robots connected to a hive mind, singularly and collectively known as the Geth, had officially begun production and servitude to their Quarian makers. While things were good for a while, the human year 1873 AD marked the first time that the Quarians began to show concern over their creations when a Geth unit queried them, "Does this unit have a soul?" In the human year 1895 AD, the Geth had more or less achieved sentience and, existing within a hive mind, their intelligence had grown exponentially. Fearing what they might be able to do, the Quarians began to shut the Geth down and began dismantling them. But that's the funny thing about sentient life, isn't it? It doesn't take too kindly to being dismantled. It's wartime. In what is often referred to as the Morning War, the Geth swiftly drove the Quarians from their own worlds, including their home world. The Quarian people, now without a planet to call their own, moved aboard their numerous large-scale spaceships and began to live a nomadic lifestyle aboard what they call the Migrant Fleet. The war was over before it had even really begun, and to make matters worse, the Quarian embassy aboard the Citadel was closed as punishment for their creation of the Geth. The Geth, on the other hand, isolated themselves to the Quarian systems and closed themselves off from the rest of the galaxy, constructing massive megastructures that housed and ran their hive mind programs and allowing them to exponentially increase their intelligence and power. In the year 1961 AD, Yuri Gagarin was the first human to ever travel to space. 8 years later, man landed on the moon. These were the first steps that would eventually lead to humanity getting mixed up in all of this prior nonsense. But there was more nonsense to come, as a species known as the Drell had, over the past 600 or so years, been heavily polluting their homeworld following an early industrial revolution. Ignorant of the looming effects of climate change, the planet was on the verge of becoming inhospitable, and with the species not having spaceflight, their days were numbered. Fortunately, they were able to make contact with the Hanar, who swiftly mounted a large-scale rescue operation for the doomed species. Hundreds of thousands of Drell were rescued and taken to the Hanar homeworld, and while many were unfortunately left behind and dying slowly in a Mad Max kind of situation, the surviving Drell are eternally grateful to the Hanar and begin to bond with their squishy rescuers greatly. In the human year 2149 AD, humanity discovers a Mass Effect relay orbiting the Sun. Quickly they begin to settle nearby systems ignorant of the goings-ons of the other people out in space with them. One planet they colonized was, incidentally, Eden Prime. A thing you may or may not know about us humans is that we just can't quite seem to get along with our neighbours. In the name of exploration, a group of humans attempt to activate an inactive relay. This practice is, unfortunately for them, forbidden by galactic law to prevent another Rachni War-style situation from happening. Worse still, this venture was observed by the Turians, resulting once again in wartime. Unable to make contact with the humans, the Turians assume the worst and decide to attack. The Turian military shortly thereafter invade the human colony of Shanxi, and prepare for a full-scale galactic war. The Council swiftly intervenes and makes official contact with humanity, showcasing to them the Citadel. Peace is declared after a brief but brutal war, and before anything was able to escalate to further extremes, and humanity begins extensive and continuing contact with the galactic community at large, even being introduced at this point to biotics, of which humans are seemingly quite susceptible. Humanity establishes the Systems Alliance, their main hub of government and military and all spacefaring matters, and begin to aid the galaxy in pursuits of science, engineering, military and other various technologies. In the human year 2165 AD, humanity was granted an embassy on the Citadel following various trade negotiations, colony foundations, and numerous diplomatic discussions. Humanity looked to continue their expansion into the stars, eyeing up an area of the galaxy known as the Skyllian Verge. In the human year 2171 AD, Batarians expressed the desire to further their pre-established interests in the area, as they had already begun to colonize this region. Having been subsequently denied support in their endeavours from the Council, the Batarians went off in a huff and closed their embassies on the Citadel and isolated themselves immediately. As humanity's endeavours into the Skyllian Verge came to fruition, a large-scale assault from the Batarians was launched on a colony known as Elysium. The attack is repelled, but alas, it's nonetheless wartime. 2 years later, the Alliance launches major offensives on a large moon that served as a major hub of criminal activity among the Batarians. Having mostly relied on hired help from pirates and ruffians, the Batarian threat against humanity was halted shortly thereafter. Peace prevailed once more. The Batarians remained isolated from the galactic community, and, finally for real this time, in the human year 2183 AD, Commander Shepard of humanity's Systems Alliance is sent to the colony of Eden Prime to investigate a mysterious Prothean beacon, resulting in the death of the Turian Spectre Nihilus at the hands of a seemingly rogue Spectre named Saren, before she returned to the Citadel to pursue further information on the matter and expose Saren's crimes to the galaxy. As her ship arrives at the Citadel, Shepard is given the grave task of speaking to the current members of the Council to report on what went down on Eden Prime. This is where the game opens up a little bit and gives you a real chance to meet some crazy aliens. As discussed, the Citadel currently has large populations of the 3 Council races, Asari, Solarian and Turian. Additionally, it hosts the 4 embassy races, Volus, Elcor, Hanar and Human. This also sort of includes the Drell, although they don't have an embassy and also don't appear in the first game, so let's just forget about them for now. And lastly, the Rejects, Batarian, Quarian and Krogan, who, while they are allowed on the Citadel, aren't given any political power of any kind. After a brief conversation with the human ambassador, a man named Donald Udina, control of Commander Shepard is thrust upon me and the game allows full freedom of movement. Exploration of this part of the Citadel, known as the Presidium, is encouraged, quickly providing an opportunity to visit the Volus and Elcor embassy just across the hall, where the game provides a more natural way to learn a little more about their people, alongside a gentle nudge to go visit someone known as the Asari Consort. I have plenty of chances to just generally go around and chat with people to learn some lore snippets and the opinions of various characters' thoughts on the goings-ons of the galaxy, including digging some information about opinions on humanity. The Volus ambassador is, for example, very much not fond of humanity.
You humans are new to the Citadel, and yet the Council has granted you great favor.
And neither is the commander of the Citadel's primary police force named C-Sec.
If the Council wants to make humanity their new favorite pet, that's their business. But I don't have to like it.
Another interesting location the game provides on the Citadel as a whole is a chance to talk to a holographic Asari that effectively acts as a tour guide of the area, filling you in on various places of interest and helping you understand the lay of the land, and is explained as being a VI, or virtual intelligence, which is to say a non-sentient computer intelligence that merely simulates a facsimile of a more functional and elevated being. Crossing the river is a chance to meet this consort who, despite what the name suggests, is really more of a fortune teller or tarot reader as opposed to a entertainer. The consort makes a request of Shepard to speak to a soldier who was unable or unwilling to seek her professionally and made things personal and weird. This is the first real side quest I picked up, and it's plonked neatly into the journal, separated into the assignments tab as opposed to the missions tab, which refers to the main quests of the game. I won't be bothering to fill in the details on absolutely every single side quest in the game, but I'll certainly talk about some highlights, or ones that I feel are more pertinent. If it's going to keep you up at night with a burning desire to find out the conclusion to the side quest about collecting rocks, well then I recommend playing the game yourself or visiting a urologist to get that burning desire looked at. After doing a wee bit of shopping, I decide it's time enough to pay a visit to the council themselves.
Now we just have to trust Ambassador Urdnot.
No, we don't, sir.
After a riveting elevator conversation with the lads, I arrive in the grand chambers of the Citadel Council and have a chat with some doubtlessly insignificant bozo called Garrus, a CSEC officer. Garrus informs us that he's investigated Saren previously, but has been unsuccessful in finding any relevant dirt that would have any degree of swaying power. Alas, Shepard is heading into the meeting sans evidence.
The investigation by Citadel Security turned up no evidence.
The testimony of one traumatized dock worker is hardly compelling proof.
Our judgment must be based on facts and evidence, not wild imaginings and reckless speculation.
The Council has found no evidence of any connection between Saren and the Geth.
Well, that went well. Shepard, Kaidan, Ashley, Anderson and Udina determine that they need to split up and look for clues, find evidence that Saren is up to no good, tangible evidence, and bring it before the Council to get them to listen to reason. As far as any of them know, Saren's attack isn't going to be an isolated incident, and any and all colonies, human or otherwise, could be at risk of facing the same suffering and carnage wrought unto Eden Prime. Kaidan suggests seeking out that Garrus bloke to see what little evidence he rassled up, which is as good a lead as any. Alas, Udina's contact in CSEC who could help you locate Garrus was suspended for having a bit of the old glug-glug, may himself prove problematic. Anderson suggests seeking him at Cora's den, as well as having a word with a Volus fella who is allegedly an accomplice of someone called the Shadow Broker, who is audaciously described as some sort of shadowy information broker who has their fingers in a staggering number of pies, for sale at typically high prices. Udina and Anderson agree that it's best this hunt is left in Shepard's capable hands due to Anderson's tumultuous personal history with Saren and Udina's political influence muddying the waters, and so with two reliable leads afforded, it's up to the squad to find some evidence. Wandering around, I stumble across a guy who is gathering data on some weird creatures that have already been spotted about the Citadel. These sort of mantis-like things are known as keepers and effectively serve as maintenance across the entire station. Like many things, they were already here when the Asari rocked up to the Citadel, and have just been largely accepted as some sort of robotic maintenance staff that repairs and maintains systems across the Citadel. Since nobody knows much about them, however, this gentleman employs Shepard to plant trackers on them in order to help him garner some information. It couldn't hurt to have more quests, so I humbly accept his proposal as something to do alongside my present investigation, as these sorts of quests that encourage exploration of areas are generally welcome in my eyes as ways of getting new players to stretch their legs and see the sights. The broker I was sent to informs me that he will waive his regular fees for the trade of information due to the duplicitous nature of Saren. As it would happen, Saren's long list of betrayals and skullduggery extends to the Shadow Broker themselves, as he committed a betrayal unto the broker and drew their ire. In return, the Shadow Broker hired a Krogan mercenary to hunt Saren. Another lead afoot, and with more evidence to boot, the gang heads off down to CSEC to investigate where the Volus informed us this Krogan would be. Dealt with an Evan jellyfish on the way, met up with a guy claiming to be my superfan, chatted with a journalist and a waitress, watched a performance art piece, helped out the consort, and then finally had a word with Harkin.
Hey there, sweetheart. You looking for some fun? 'Cause I gotta say, that soldier getup looks real good on that body of yours.
This kind gentleman informed me that Garrus paid a visit to some sort of doctor, and the hunt continued. I was informed about a side quest I was doing to head down to CSEC, and since I knew there was a Krogan waiting for me there, I figured it couldn't hurt to check that out first.
You should warn Fist. I will kill him.
You want me to arrest you?
I want you to try.
As it just so happens, the Krogan knows nothing about Saren specifically, but he knows where to find the information, on a Quarian who is seeking out a criminal named Fist for protection. As is often the case of people named after body parts, however, he wasn't exactly on the up and up and was looking to sell her out to Saren. With more information under our belt, the Krogan, named Urdnot Wrex, offers to join Shepard in the hunt for Saren. After all, he's being paid to find Saren, so taking him along seems like a no-brainer because he is a big boy. Hi, just a little addendum here. Wrex was hired to kill Fist. I think I must have forgotten to mention that the first time when I was writing and recording this, so whoopsies. As I make my way across the Citadel, which by the way feels like it gets bigger and bigger every single time, I decide to pay a visit to this Dr. Michelle that Garrus is visiting, blast away a couple of bozos, saving the day because I'm a hero and it's no big deal, and Garrus elects to have a little chat with me. It just so happens all roads lead to a solid fisting. Fist is the mastermind of this attack on Michelle. With both Wrex and Garrus wanting to take this guy down, I figure it's time to squad up with my new alien buddies and drop into his nightclub, Cora's Den. With his dudes all dead, Fist spills the beans on where I might be able to find the Quarian with the evidence. Fist set her up to have a meeting with the quote-unquote Shadow Broker, but this was a duplicitous action, as she's actually waltzing headfirst into an ambush from Saren's goons. Wrex commits a cheeky little war crime and, with the clock now ticking, Shepard and gang rush off to the markets to try and intercept this deal and save that Quarian's life from this creepy dude that she's meeting with. With her safe and the evidence now safely in our possession, it's time for Shepard vs Council Round 2.
You wanted proof? There it is.
This evidence is irrefutable, Ambassador. Saren will be stripped of his Spectre status, and all efforts will be made to bring him in to answer for his crimes.
With the Council now privy to Saren's monkey business and overwhelming evidence that he is searching for something called the Conduit, with some sort of scheme involving something called the Reapers, it is elected that Saren is a sufficient threat to life in the galaxy. While the Council aren't necessarily convinced on this whole Reaper stuff, they do decide that the times are drastic enough for the delegation of the very first human Spectre, Commander Saoirse Shepard.
You are the first human Spectre, Commander. This is a great accomplishment for you and your entire species.
After cleaning up a few of the other assignments in the area and with full authorization from the Council, Shepard and co discuss where to go from here. It would seem that Saren has expressed a lot of interest in two planets, Feros and Noveria, and his accomplice's voice was identified as belonging to a woman named Benezia, someone whose daughter, named Liara Tassoni, is a scientist specializing in Prothean technology. Before we leave, Anderson tells us a bit about his history with Saren, stating that he himself was once considered for the position of being humanity's first Spectre, before Saren's sabotage somewhat squandered his scopes of Spectrehood. Anderson hands us the keys to his ship, the Normandy SR-1, and sends us off into the galaxy to stop Saren, for Eden Prime, for Anderson, and for humanity. I took the opportunity to get to know my crew a bit before heading off, checking out this Joker fellow and seeing what our engineer and doctor are like. All of these people are the same ones from before the Eden Prime mission, just now we get to have actual conversations with them. I also get to have some interpersonal conversations with Kaidan, Ashley, Garrus, Wrex, and our new Quarian friend, Tali'Zorah and Rayya, or Tali for short. After getting to know everyone and chatting up Navigator Presley, the perfect little specimen, the Normandy undocks and sets off once again into space. Hunting for Prothean artifacts could always benefit from the assistance of an expert on Prothean artifacts, and one who happens to be the daughter of one of our villains is too tempting an offer to refuse outright. Touching down on the surface of the planet Therum, it's readily apparent that this place is hell, almost literally with all the lava. It seems that our old friends, the Geth, have arrived here first and are clearly interested in not letting us find Liara. Unfortunately for them, Shepard is the main character, so we manage to defeat their overwhelming forces with our patented girl power. Arriving into the excavation site where Liara has been working, we find her trapped in a compromising position. A bubble.
This thing I'm in is a Prothean security device.
After dismissing the possibility that Saren has recruited SpongeBob SquarePants as an unlikely ally, and with Liara establishing that she is estranged from her mother, we set to work on rescuing her from her entrapment. Alas, there is a force of Geth betwixt us and the control that will release her, and, most peculiarly of all, the Geth are being led by a Krogan. Fortunately, this rescue operation is actually a pretty quick and simple thing. Hop on down, get to the other side of the barrier and do a quick little minigame thingy to activate Moira's ultimate. After a quick lift up, we disable Zarya's ultimate.
Can we get much higher?
Liara tells us that she knows a way out at a nearby elevator, and after being needlessly sassed by Ashley...
Why would the Geth come after me? Do you think Benezia's involved?
Saren's looking for the conduit. Think fast, Miss Prothean expert.
We elect to escape with due haste and reconvene on the Normandy. A brief run-in with the aforementioned Krogan later, we do him in and the four ladies escape in a most dramatic fashion. Back on the ship, the lads and Liara reconvene for a little meeting. She thanks us for saving her life and tells us a bit about her research on the Protheans. While she isn't fully in the know in regards to the conduit or its location, she believes it was connected to the Protheans' mysterious extinction, but has little evidence to go off of. She suggests that the lack of evidence of Protheans could be a greater mystery in and of itself, and that the Protheans may not have even been the first species to have undergone such a mysterious mass extinction event, believing there were other galactic empires preceding them. This research is something that she has been working on for the past 50 years, which blows the minds of a lot of the humans in the crew as they can't really fathom that she's over 100, and still considered to be a young adult at best. Liara has dedicated her life to figuring out the grand mystery of the Protheans. Since Saren's plans are intrinsically linked with the conduit, something that Liara believes to be related to the cause of their disappearance, it seems logical to bring her along as the final member of our crew. Plus, it really seems like the safest place for her to be after all. Using the opportunity to speak to her in private after the meeting, Liara tells us a little bit about herself and her people. The Asari, being a race of only women, breed through more of a mental connection than a physical one, with Asari being able to use the DNA of even other species to try and diversify their gene pool and create unique and interesting Asari. In spite of this, Liara reveals that she herself is in fact a pureblood, an Asari who is the daughter of two Asari, though she does not know the identity of Benezia's partner. She pretty immediately and clumsily expresses an interest in Shepard, both scientific and perhaps also a little bit romantic, and while that's very flattering, I think we'll leave her for now and use this time to get to know some of our other crewmates for the time being. Kaidan is at this point the squad mate we spent the most amount of time with, so it seems a fitting time to look into a little bit about what his whole deal is. It is made apparent by this point from his abilities and the handy-dandy little bars that pop up when selecting a squad to inform you of their characteristics that Kaidan, much like my Shepard, is a skilled biotic who is also extremely capable when it comes to technology. Kaidan, who is about 32 years old, relays to us his backstory. His father was in the military and his mother was involved in transport, with Kaidan himself becoming exposed to Element Zero in the womb. I've avoided talking about Element Zero because it's scientifically confusing to think about. Basically the magical goop that allows the relays and biotic abilities to function. Midichlorians, if you will. Many young humans, even those not born yet, who are exposed to Element Zero or EZO, are susceptible to gaining biotic abilities. Many others are infected with ill health, including terminal brain cancer. On account of Kaidan's not being deceased, it's safe to assume that his biotic abilities flourished and, based on his military rank, were at least somewhat potent. Biotic abilities, certainly in humans, are often supplemented with implants to make more and more powerful variations of biotic abilities that allow the person to harness their power and wield it in a variety of ways. Those deemed worthy were often encouraged to attend a Special Alliance Academy known as Biotic Acclimation and Temperance Training, or BART for short, or if you will, Brain Camp, as Kaidan refers to it. The whole thing was a super duper secret training camp where young'uns were sent to hone their biotic abilities. Based on how Kaidan describes it, I would primarily refer to the whole thing as pretty awful all around. His tutor was a Turian by the name of Vernus, who had fought against humanity previously in the First Contact War. He did not like humans, yet he was teaching humans to use biotics. After enough taunting and beating of his students, Vernus went over the line when he attacked a student and broke her arm for the terrible crime of using her powers to grab a glass of water. This would prove to be Vernus's biggest mistake, because it would just so happen that Kaidan had a bit of a crush on this girl. Kaidan went berserk, killing Vernus and leading to the almost immediate shutdown of Brain Camp. The entire program was kept hush-hush by the Alliance, and the students scattered across the galaxy. Kaidan in particular took several years to assess his life going forwards, but ultimately decided to return to the military and follow in his father's footsteps. No longer would he be a gifted kid with his powers being paraded as an experiment, he would be a soldier first and foremost. It didn't take long for him to rise the ranks to lieutenant, even in spite of the adverse health effects caused by his experimental implants. After serving under Anderson and now Shepard, he is a determined and extraordinarily strong-willed person who struggles at interpersonal relationships, but has a keen mind for politics and strategy. What I think I personally like the most about Kaidan is his views towards Vernus's behaviour in particular. Understandably, he hated the man and still somewhat resents him to this day, but he also accepts and realises that Vernus was just that, a single man that is not representative of his people. Kaidan is overall kind-hearted and generally a good guy who will try his best to be cordial, polite, or even, dare I say, friendly to just about anyone, even if his social issues make it a struggle. I think it's relevant to bring up what I like about Kaidan because even if he is ultimately a pretty staunch militaristic man with a reserved and arguably thin personality, his good nature is generally something I find admirable in spite of his hardships. His, at this point, obvious attraction to Shepard aside, he's generally just a good egg. Yeah, so I'm gonna be blunt about this one in spite of how this may make people see me, but Ashley, at least insofar as the first game is concerned, is not an especially likeable person in my eyes. I don't hate her, and I certainly find her to be at least somewhat interesting to hear the opinions of, but oh man, to put it politely, she is certainly more flawed and nuanced than Kaidan is. Ashley explains to us that in addition to sharing a name with Bruce Campbell's character from The Evil Dead, she comes from a massive line of Alliance soldiers which, much like Kaidan, includes her dear old man. Per tradition, Ashley enlisted in the Navy the second she left schooling and began training for service. It was made immediately apparent that she was proficient in many weapons and armour classifications and was decorated with several commendations. With high endurance and great combat instincts, she was very swiftly promoted to lead a squad and then a platoon. With further commendations coming in, she would have ordinarily been fast-tracked to a high-ranking command position. Instead, she was denied numerous opportunities for advancement with little to no provided feedback. Having been treated like a modern university graduate, she ultimately accepts her fate and sticks with her assignment protecting Eden Prime. As we all know, that assignment ended with what can best be described as some drama, and she is now among us on the Normandy. She gives us some tidbits about herself. She feels like she has a lot to live up to, she has 3 younger sisters, she has some strong religious beliefs, and also her grandfather was the guy who surrendered the human colony to the Jones in the First Colony War. That's not a great legacy. As a result, both Ashley and her father have struggled to advance to the appropriate levels befitting their abilities in the Alliance Navy, and the reason is pretty clear. There is resentment to her family on account of this humiliating surrender from Alliance Command. Like, her name is tainted, and Ashley is rightly bothered by this. She naturally places the blame where it is deserved, of course, with the aliens. Yeah, so this is basically where my problems tend to lie with Ashley. It's made abundantly clear that this isn't a case of xenophobia.
It's not racism, not really.
With her even stating that a supposed humanity-first political organisation called Terra Firma are akin to jackals that sully humanity's political standings on the Citadel. Despite this, she's still pretty quick to confide that she is alarmed by the alien squadmates we've accrued for this mission, dismisses the Prothean technology as a sorry mumbo-jumbo, and even viewing Liara with extreme suspicion that seems a little problematic. I don't believe her to be a truly bad person, or far from being a poorly written character as many seem to online, but I do feel comfortable saying she's probably my least favourite squadmate in the first game. She does get better in her attitude later on in the game, and especially in future games in the series, but she just makes it pretty hard for me to be endeared to her over many of the others at the beginning. Her combat abilities, however, are extremely useful. With a wide array of guns, armors, and explosives, she's capable of taking out even the biggest of enemies almost by herself, which makes her valuable for difficult engagements. Her lack of biotic or tech abilities can make her a bit of a liability if you're looking for any sort of tactical engagement, but if you like seeing things blow up and die, then after seeking the appropriate professional help, you can't go wrong with taking Ashley along on an assignment. While Ashley might not be my favourite of squadmates in the game, I think she serves as an excellent segue into the unanimously decided fan favourite squadmate of this franchise. Our friendly Turian, who we met before speaking to the Council, has rescinded his position as an officer of the law to serve aboard our ship, believing that stopping Saren is a more meaningful way of helping the galaxy than any assignment he could work on for the police. Garrus is a sharpshooter, excellent with weapons and technology to make sure his guns get the most bang for their buck. He loves sniper rifles and ship cannons, and he is inexperienced in all of this. Even before coming aboard our ship, it was clear that he is a man who believes in justice, doing the right thing and helping those who need it. He looked into Saren even against his superior's orders because he believed it was right. He saved Dr. Michelle because he believed it was right. He quit the Force and tagged along with us because he believed it was right. I don't necessarily know if I'd say that the first game gives him the opportunity to shine the way that he does in the future games, but he's immediately endearing as a level head on the crew who tries to see the good in all people. He's reassuring, he's kind, and he does his best to not let anger overtake him unless that person deserves it. His conversations with other crew members indicate someone who is all around just a likeable dude, with everyone taking an immediate liking to his attitude on just about all things except for Ashley. Garrus indicates that he was once fingered as a potential Spectre, but was ultimately blocked from further candidacy by his strict father, himself a high-ranking C-Sec officer. He also laments that his biggest issue with the whole Saren situation is simply that he believes Saren is guilty, but regulations are stopping him from pursuing any further. He explains that this is reminiscent of a case he worked on before, where a Solarian named Dr. Salion was hiring homeless people to work in his labs before cutting them open to clone their organs and sell them on the black market. If the surgery was successful, he would give these employees a small cut of the profits, and if not, then he'd just leave the defective organs in there regardless of the consequences to their health. When C-Sec went to arrest the man, he quickly fled with a few employees as hostages. Those hostages ultimately saved his life as C-Sec opted not to fire upon Dr. Salion's ship, leaving Garrus frustrated that a man who was no doubt going to end up killing these people regardless would get away due to their lives. This presents a bit of an issue, of course, as killing innocents to stop him is ultimately not a great thing to do and would no doubt reflect poorly on C-Sec. So while I can understand them not wanting to shoot down the ship, the lack of subsequent follow-up investigations into the Doctor's whereabouts is a much more understandable frustration for Garrus to have. Much like with Saren, however, Garrus did eventually take the matter into his own hands, and he has Dr. Salion's ship's location in his possession. I like to align myself politically as anti-murder, so I opt to take Garrus to finish up his investigation with Shepard's help. Once arriving on the ship, it's made apparent that his employees have become abominations incapable of independent or coherent thought. After dealing with the residents of Vault 22, Shepard and Garrus organise an impromptu meeting with Dr. Salion at gunpoint. The Doctor tries to weasel his way out of it, but Garrus' bad mood makes him reconsider that course of action. Knowing that his goose is undoubtedly cooked, he tries one last gambit, begging for his life. As satisfying as it would be to see his head get all squishy, there is one burning question that is left unanswered. What exactly did he do to all those people that made them liable to refer to me as a smoothskin? And what other Vault-Tec-style experiments has he been performing since his last run-in with Garrus? As such, I elect to persuade Garrus to back down from his self-appointed position as judge, jury and executioner, and petition that the Doctor be taken back to the military for questioning. While Garrus acquiesces, the Doctor changes his mind, deciding that he can somehow take out 3 heavily armoured and well-equipped people who have already proven themselves to be capable of killing his subjects. He is sorely mistaken. Garrus laments that this renders the whole exercise of not immediately executing him to be a moot point, but Shepard explains that while it was ultimately fruitless and it is of course now unlikely that he will be doing very much talking, being merciful even to a monster can be the correct choice when it comes to doing the right thing. If the Alliance were able to get him to talk, who knows what he could have known that could ultimately end up saving lives across the galaxy. I don't want to dwell too much on the whole morality thing just yet, I'll save that for a later segment, but Garrus truly represents a good moral compass that just needed a nudge in the right direction. I think the combination of his kind-hearted personality, sense of justice and a hint of naivete and hot-headedness all lead to Garrus being such a beloved character, and it is truly no surprise that he still lives on in the hearts of gamers everywhere. Much like Garrus, everyone loves Tali. Many equate Garrus as being a best friend who is with you through thick and thin, and I've also seen many see Tali as something of a little sister-type character, someone who the game does its best to make you really, really want to protect. We first met her waltzing headfirst into a trap, and while she ultimately recognised the red flags with the meeting, it's safe to say that her life was more or less saved by us. The information she had on Saren was crucial in getting Shepard off of the Citadel, and so an unlikely alliance was formed. Before Tali stumbled onto Saren's audio logs, she was actually on what she refers to as her pilgrimage. In spite of her garb, this isn't a religious thing really, it's squarely a pilgrimage that is seen as necessary as a result of the Quarian's unique living situation in the galaxy. As previously discussed, the Quarian homeworld and all of its colonies were overtaken by the Geth, and her people now live aboard giant ships floating aimlessly through the galaxy. Due to the undoubted precariousness of living aboard a spaceship, the Quarians, who were already pretty naturally gifted at engineering, had to focus tenfold on their efforts in maintenance and repairs to keep the ships from malfunctioning and killing everyone on board. This not only puts a lot of pressures on the current generation of engineers at any given time, it also means that the future generation of Quarians needs to be trained and ready to predominantly take up the mantles of engineering roles, to help fix and upgrade parts of the ship where appropriate. As such, young adult Quarians are sent out into the wider galaxy on a pilgrimage, to seek out and return with a piece of technology, information, or large supply stash that will benefit life on the flotilla. When they return, they leave the ship they were born on to be transferred to a different ship to mitigate chances of inbreeding. This makes the whole ordeal a pretty emotional affair for Quarians, who not only have this one chance to leave home for the first and perhaps only time in their lives, but also have to face the fact that returning is going to separate them from just about everyone they know and love anyway. This leads many Quarians who head out on their pilgrimage to sack the whole thing off and willingly stay away from the flotilla, never to return. Tali intends to return from her pilgrimage. That said, before she was able to find something worthwhile is when she stumbled onto Saren's logs on an isolated Geth unit. Geth technology would often be very much seen as a worthwhile gift, but these logs brought nothing but trouble for Tali. With her now in relative safety aboard the Normandy, she decides that Saren working with the Geth more than qualifies him as a tangible threat to the flotilla, and not helping Shepard with her quest to stop him would be very selfish. Besides, she needs something better than an audio log for her pilgrimage. On a moon orbiting a random gas giant in, frankly, the middle of nowhere, is a Geth outpost. This place is tiny, but crucially contains a terminal at the very back that contains a plethora of data on the Geth that would be more than impressive for Tali to return with. After letting her make a copy of the data, she makes it clear that she is eternally grateful, and a true and everlasting friendship between the two is formed. I like Tali. I think when I first played Mass Effect that she was perhaps the one I was endeared to the most. She's just so warm, you know? Her personality is kind and soft, and she really does exude those feelings of a little sister that many claim her to have. In addition to all of this, she's insanely smart. She's by far the resident expert on technology, with even the Normandy's engineer admitting some intimidation at her immense knowledge. While she's not necessarily the strongest combatant ever, both due to her unfamiliarity with firearms and her Quarian physique leading to immense fragility, she more than makes up for it with her infectious enthusiasm to all things technology, and in how unbelievably friendly she is. Tali's just great to talk to, and I always love hearing what she has to say about her mission, and much like Garrus, I think she really deserves all the praise she gets. There's a saying we have in the UK, save the best for last. They also say this in America, and probably just about everywhere else, but it's imperative you know that we say this in the UK. We've talked about the good, and we've indeed talked about the bad, but like my ex said when she broke up with me, it's time that we talk about the ugly. The rest of our crew is young, technically. Tali is 22, Ashley 25, Kaidan is 32, Liara is about 106, which is very young in Asari terms, and Garrus surprisingly doesn't seem to have an exact age listed, though a writer suggested he's somewhere in the 25 to 27 range. Even Shepard is only 29 at this point. Wrex, however, was alive for at least some of the Krogan rebellions. If you cast your mind back, you might realise this means it's not impossible that he's hovering somewhere around the 1500 years old mark. Krogan live very long lifespans, but due to their generally violent natures and tendency to die at least relatively young, a Krogan living to this tremendous of an age is a sign of a truly accomplished fighter, who doubtlessly has many, many adventures under their belt. Specifically in Rex's case, as a Krogan rebellions veteran and long-time mercenary for hire and/or bounty hunter, Wrex is seen as a pretty fearsome individual. This is aided by not only his prowess in a plethora of firearms, but his rare biotic abilities that make him a real force to be reckoned with. Despite this, what stands out the most about Wrex is that, while he is certainly violent and aggressive in a lot of ways, he's clearly a learned man, a thinker. He was one of the few people at the end of the rebellions who truly believed peace was the way forwards, that they should cease their fighting and hunker down to focus on their breeding efforts to try and truly beat the odds. Urdnot Jarod, Wrex's own father, disagreed vehemently. Jarod believed that violence and continued war was the way to, persuade the Council to reverse the crippling effects of the Genophage and free the Krogan once more. It's pretty clear that Jarod was not an especially learned man. As a result of their disagreement, Jarod openly attacked Wrex in spite of the sacred ground they had agreed to meet on. Wrex's warriors were slaughtered by Jarod's goons, but despite the overwhelming odds, Wrex sunk a knife into his father's heart and escaped with his life. He realised that many of the Krogan's views aligned with that of his father. They didn't value honour or courage, they valued violence, and they would dedicate their lives to it no matter what. While Wrex had lived, he was defeated. he gave up on his efforts and took up a life as many other Krogan did, as a mercenary. In his many adventures, Wrex made many friends and even more enemies, doing all sorts of crazy jobs across the galaxy, even one time incidentally working for Saren. But his passion for reigniting Krogan culture always lingered in his mind and in his heart. Wrex is blunt. He doesn't mince words, he tells it exactly how he sees it. He can be cruel or harsh, but he often speaks the truth. Like I said, he's shockingly wise, and his experiences are indicative of someone who could truly command a room not only through his firm beliefs, but also through his doubtlessly terrifying fury. It's pretty strange to think it, but the rest of the crew weirdly also gets along swimmingly with Wrex. While they're apprehensive at first, his respect for Liara and Kaidan's biotics and his interest in Ashley's combat prowess make him highly respected by the rest of the crew, even if his personality can keep many of them from getting close. That said, Wrex isn't crazy about Garrus. He's apprehensive about trusting Turians due to their species' histories, but he's more than cordial enough to try and keep his issues to himself, and the two grow to respect each other somewhat throughout the game. Shepard does choose to get to know Wrex, however, or at least my Shepard does, because while I was indifferent to him the first time I played this game, playing the sequels made me love Wrex. He's a truly interesting and fun character who is not at all what I was expecting from a game like this, and I really do attribute him to my appreciation for the Mass Effect games. Wrex made me love companions in video games. I mean it, before Mass Effect my experience with RPGs was limited, and the only companions I really remember caring much about were the New Vegas ones. I like those companions, but it wasn't until Wrex that it really clicked for me just how much writing in a video game can move you, if that makes sense. But anyway, enough about my man crush on my big froggy boy. Like Garrus and Tali, Wrex also has a little quest we can embark on in this game to get to know more about him. Unlike Garrus and Tali, I don't really think it's all that good. Garrus got a quest where he uncovers a part of his past that haunts him and uses it as a chance to grow. Tali gets a quest where she gets to complete her goal and truly blossom into the woman she was always destined to be. Wrex's quest consists of finding his ancestral family armour that has fallen into the hands of a Turian pirate. It's pretty quick and surprisingly difficult encounter for what it is, but once that armour is back in Wrex's hands, that's kinda it. It comes back later and can influence stuff down the line, but all in all it's a small little inconsequential quest that doesn't do too much heavy lifting, or indeed lifting at all, to Wrex's character. All the flavour surrounding the quest is the real juicy bits. This is more like a bit of bread on the side that you use to mop it all up when you're done. And with that, we've discussed all of the companions of the first Mass Effect game. As I said, this was my first real experience with well-written and established companions in a game, and I absolutely adore them to this day. Above all else, the characters are what makes Mass Effect, and I will doubtlessly continue to gush about them throughout the rest of this, especially since I believe we have a bit of unfinished business with Liara. But before we talk about Liara's mum, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the other people on the ship. We'll start with the Normandy's chief engineer, Lieutenant Gregory Adams. This guy's kinda bland. Don't get me wrong, he's not abhorrent or even at all problematic, he's just not got a lot going on, which is fine. He's not exactly a major character, and I wouldn't for 1 second be surprised if many people forget he even exists. But he's here, and he's the guy who keeps the ship ship-shape, the ideal shape for a ship to be. He's calm, he's really nice to Tali, and the two of them speak from time to time when you enter the room. I like Adams, he's neat, but there's not much to talk about really. He's just a decent side character who is there, and you can talk to, and he's not unpleasant. Dr. Chakwa has a lot more going on, in addition to her stellar accent.
I enlisted right out of med school.
She's naturally the person who patches up the crew after missions. She's more or less the ideal doctor, calm and polite in all manners medical and excellent under stress. As a pretty much lifelong medical professional serving the Alliance, she's had some adventures and seen some stuff, and she's had her fair share of cynicisms in her mind over the years. Despite this, she's generally just also a pretty nice person, and as someone who worked with Anderson for years, she's a little excited for this change of pace working for a Spectre and being a part of history. Now for the big one. Flight Lieutenant Jeff Morrow, more commonly referred to as Joker, baby. In many ways, Joker is a step above the others mentioned in this segment, and to be honest, it feels a little bit sacrilegious to relegate him to the same part as them. Joker is confident, maybe even cocky, but also extremely talented, easily one of the best pilots in the galaxy. He's very accomplished and loyal and works extremely hard, having suffered with a major health issue known as Rolex syndrome, which is very similar to osteogenesis imperfecta in the real world, a condition more frequently referred to as brittle bones. Joker relies on crutches and leg braces for personal mobility and struggled greatly, with many people in his flight academy mocking him for his stern expression and infrequent smiling as a result of his hard work and dedication. But as they say, hard work and dedication pays off, and after surpassing even his instructor in ability, Joker was the only one smiling at his graduation. Then he stole the Normandy. He got turned down for the pilot position and even mocked by a Turian general he was escorting to watch the test flight, and due to his grievances at the tasteless remarks made by the general, Joker engaged in some tomfoolery and hijinks that led to the onlookers of this maiden voyage worrying that the ship had been captured by a hostile force. Ships are dispatched to shoot the Normandy down, and Joker evaded them, returning the ship unscathed. After rightfully receiving a good seeing to, Joker narrowly evades a court-martialing when the aforementioned Turian general sweeps in to his defence. With Anderson also arguing in favour of Joker's evident prowess, he is instead rewarded for his bad behaviour with the firm position as the Normandy's pilot. As his foolishness in this situation might suggest, Joker styles himself as a bit of a funny guy, a comedian, perhaps even a joker. He makes wisecracks, he jests, he japes, and he acts as if he's not taking anything seriously, but he also trusts wholly in his abilities and those of his crew. While the beginning of the game portrayed him as distrustful of Nihilus, he pretty quickly grows fond of all of the crew, and especially of Commander Shepard, with whom he swiftly forms a fantastic rapport. Overall, I'm pretty fond of all three of these characters, especially Joker, and they all add a bit more flavour to the Normandy with less combat-oriented roles with the squad mates and more impractical and reliable military trades. These guys really make the ship feel like a home, and they're just cool dudes, you know? But there is another. My sweet, sweet boy, Navigator Presley, such a cutie. Man, he might be a bit xenophobic and abrasive and distrusting and kind of really not that fond of many of the crew at first, but man, he can get it, you know? Anyway, where were we? Noveria. A big ball of ice that serves as home to all the hustle and bustle that attracts all of the galaxy's Patrick Batemans. Businessmen, scientists, and the people protecting them is the majority population of the planet. Well, that and a powerful Asari matriarch. Having tracked Benezia to this location, Joker drops Shepard, Liara, and we'll go with Wrex off at the port. After having a friendly discussion with security, they make their way forwards. A friendly woman informs us that Benezia was seen leaving for a research complex a few days past, but only the administrator of this business complex is able to allow us access. With communications shut off due to the planet's perpetual British weather, paying the administrator a little visit is the only logical option forwards. The man is not particularly helpful, nor is he nice. His assistant, the woman we met before, makes it clear that the only way past this man is to seek a man named Lorik Keen, who will be able to help us find an alternative route. Lorik is the manager of an office that has recently been closed on potential corruption charges, and the man is heavily displeased. He doesn't like the administrator and is more than happy to undermine his authority in exchange for removing any evidence of foul play from his office. With the options laid before me, it seems that I can't do much else other than to help him and reevaluate where to go afterwards. While it's helping someone who's clearly not entirely on the up and up, it's not impossible that more options may present themselves after aiding him. After doing a few side quests and swapping out Liara for Garrus for the time being, we get shot at by and subsequently dispatch of some ne'er-do-wells in the office and recover this evidence for Lorik. On our way back, we are whisked away from our path to Lorik by the administrator's assistant, who now informs us that she's actually an investigator looking to oust the incumbent administrator due to his dodgy dealings that have drained money from the planet straight into his account. As it so happens, Lorik, and more importantly his evidence, are the key ingredients to a successful trial. With her promise to provide us pass herself should we help her, it's immediately apparent that the best option is to eliminate the corruption with this evidence and keep the money flowing. I think. At the very least, taking down a dirty administrator can't be a bad thing. With the administrator off to a cell and a pass now firmly in Shepard's possession, the next best course of action is to head over to this Peak 15 place where Benezia's holed up. We head back to the ship, kill some Krogan mercenary out to kill us, no big deal, and get Liara back with us. It only makes sense to bring her to see her mother, right? We leave through the garage to begin our journey to Benezia when, Geth attack. Seems that the storage crates Benezia brought through with her are full of our little friends from Eden Prime, and with civilians' lives now potentially at risk, it's clear that Benezia is up to no good, just like Saren. We kick it into 12th gear and drive over the Rocky Mountain Way to arrive at the base, only to find it overrun with more Geth and... Vaknai? Having found out the hard way that life really does find a way, we are guided by the station's VI to help re-establish the systems and get going. Following her instructions leads us to an isolated group of survivors keeping themselves safe in a remote corner of the station. Cut off from the outside world and desperate, Shepard really is a sight for sore eyes for these people. As expected, a bunch of scientists and guards aren't exactly equipped mentally or physically to deal with the incursion of Geth and Rachni they are faced with. So, in addition to finding Benezia, it seems it once again falls into the squad's hands to help out with every other assignment afforded to them. We find out that the scientists found a lone Rachni egg, did some science on it, and managed to coax life back to the extinct species. In addition to being pretty clever, this is profoundly stupid. After helping people out, we are assailed by one of Benezia's warriors masquerading as a survivor, put her down and manufacture a cure for a toxin that infected some of the people. With the survivors sort of better off than we found them, the only proper thing to do now would be to eliminate the threats and help them get out of this place. As far as we know, Benezia is in the room with the Rachni Queen, so we get a convenient opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. Benezia is trying to utilise the Rachni as a weapon on Saren's behalf, to use them to wreak havoc on people without ever having to raise a finger. Liara is most displeased at her mother's behaviour. She believes Benezia has gone insane and makes it evident that killing her mother, while regrettable, will be necessary once she attacks Shepard first. She summons more of her commandos who we deal with swiftly, before dealing with some Geth she throws our way. After eliminating all of her fodder, Benezia speaks once more.
You must listen. Saren still whispers in my mind. I can fight his compulsions, briefly, but the indoctrination is strong.
Saren has indoctrinated the Matriarch. Her mind is not her own and she is under his control, or more accurately, she believes she is somehow under the control of Saren's ship, named Sovereign. She tells us that Saren is looking for a lost relay that he believes will lead to the conduit, and that Benezia has managed to extract it from the Rachni Queen's mind. She gives it to us, begging for us to defeat Saren once and for all, before the indoctrination kicks back in.
I can't. His teeth are up my ear. Fingers on my spine. You should... you should...
Mother, don't leave. Fight him.
You've always made me proud, Liara. Die.
Benezia makes it clear that she loves her daughter before regrettably dying to her wounds. Ordinarily, that would be all that. Time to go, missions accomplished, all's good. But there is still the matter of the Rachni Queen, a long extinct and powerful species known across the galaxy for their chaos and destruction all those years ago. It would be easy to just flush the Queen down the drain and be done with it. She makes sure to speak to Shepard through the rather unsettling puppeteering of the corpse of one of Benezia's goons. The Rachni committed many atrocities in their war, but this Queen was only an egg. She isn't guilty of the crimes of her forebears, right? It seems sad, and in spite of the destruction it is capable of causing, I feel inclined to believe the Queen in her claims that she isn't intent on destruction. She wants the Rachni to begin again, which raises the important question, is it the right thing to do? Good? Evil? I would be flabbergasted if you were to tell me that you weren't familiar with these concepts. It would be genuinely the most insane thing I think anyone could have ever told me. The idea of good and evil is something that traces itself throughout all of human history, throughout the rise and fall of empires, throughout religious texts, works of fiction, dramas, comedies, the writings of great philosophers and the minds of the common citizen. Is any action inherently good? What constitutes goodness? It's hard to boil down to a core and basic concept, but many an RPG has tried to incorporate moral quandaries into their narrative. New Vegas asks you to settle the conflict across the Mojave by choosing a side in the growing conflict. Do you try to bring back the American civilization of old? Try to incorporate them as part of a vastly growing militaristic empire? Focus on scientific discovery in hopes of elevating Vegas to a new age of humanity? Or do you try to take power for yourself and incorporate your own ideals into the populace? Red Dead Redemption 2 changes the way your comrades reflect upon your life based on how much wanton destruction you caused along the way. Geralt's morality in The Witcher changes how the final conflict will ultimately turn out, and in Dragon Age it can have profound effects on how much the homies like you. All of these games released after Mass Effect. I'm not saying Mass Effect invented the idea of moral choices in video games, and it's pretty hard to actually quantify when this concept started, but I do find it telling that so many of these feel at least somewhat to take the groundwork laid out by Mass Effect and use it in their own ways. Mass Effect seemingly inspired the morality system in a lot of games. A big part of how influential Mass Effect's handling of the morality is, in my eyes, is that it's simple. Someone tells you that they have a problem and wants you to speak to someone on their behalf. You approach this person, causing a ruckus, and you are presented with options. Be kind and talk to them, or be unkind and threaten them. Kindness rewards you with good boy points, unkindness rewards you with bad boy points, otherwise known as your Paragon and Renegade score. Get further and further score in either direction and you reach milestones that allow you to initiate more dialogue options that lead to even gooder or even badder results in a situation. Now, instead of asking the person to stop what they're doing, you convince them to make a positive change to the life of the person they are impacting because you are a Paragon. Or, you become a Renegade and you shoot them in the face. I'm not gonna lie, Renegade is funny. Sometimes being evil in a game pays off with some absolutely hilarious nonsense scenes of indiscriminate violence and chaos that usually leaves a concerning number of innocents dead. But, as you've probably garnered from my choices so far, I'm generally more in favour of the good boy points. The way I like to see it in my RPGs is that I'm going to lean towards the outcome I myself would personally want to achieve. Hot take incoming, but killing is kinda not good. So if a peaceful option presents itself, especially one where the bad people still face some form of repercussion, then that is the option that will usually sway me. I avoid bloodshed, goodness prevails, and justice is served. Don't get me wrong, it's a video game, sometimes you gotta blast people down because it's necessary for the story, or just because shooting is usually more fun than having a powwow. Take Benezia for example. No matter what I did, she was predetermined to die no matter what, and I was always going to have to be the one to shoot her. Justice can't always prevail, but that's okay. Because when I'm presented with the opportunity to doom the revitalization of a species that is yet to really be given a chance at peace, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing it. I could kill the Rachni Queen and wash my hands of the whole sordid affair, but as far as I'm concerned, this queen is scared, more or less innocent, and holds no love for the Rachni of old. Killing it isn't justice, and killing it certainly isn't avoiding bloodshed. So I let her go. I allow her to prove herself of the goodness she claims to be capable of. Could it be a mistake? Well sure, but if that's the case then I'm sure Wrex and I would love to rectify it, so it's probably nothing to worry about. I just wanted to utilise this brief sojourn to talk about the morality system of Mass Effect and establish that this decision, and many of the other decisions I have made thus far, helping out my squad with their requests, aiding the investigation of the Administrator, even helping those people back on the Citadel, not only did I make those choices under the firm belief that that was the good thing to do, which the game tends to agree with as it rewarded me with Paragon points, but also safe in the knowledge that, in Mass Effect, choices both good and bad will always come back to bite you. Rest assured, while it may not be in this game, the Rachni Queen and I will meet again. I'd also like to add an addendum to this section, as I don't really know how else to put it, that most of the Rachni we face so far weren't under her control and were essentially animalistic, so don't feel bad about the ones we killed or the fact that we immediately purged the facility of them. This is saving a lot more people than it harms the Rachni at the end of the day. Returning to the ship after the business on Noveria, the group and I have a little chat about this information Benezia gave us regarding this lost relay. A logical course of action would be to head over there and pursue Saren, but without any specific information regarding his intended destination, it would be rather fruitless.
Who put you in charge? Did the commander resign when I wasn't looking?
Good lord, Ashley. Anyway, we still have a lead regarding Feros, so it seems that the game is subtly suggesting we go take a look over there for information regarding Saren's whereabouts. But first, Kaidan has a crush on Shepard. Liara also has a crush on Shepard. In Liara's case, this seems like somewhat of an inappropriate time to be approached about this, but the game once again asked me to make a choice here. On the one hand, Shepard can choose Kaidan and have somewhat of a supposedly normal relationship, something typical, you know? As I said, Kaidan's a nice enough dude, and while he may have some small blandness to him, I think the fact that he's a pretty regular guy is somewhat of a strength in regards to this decision. Then there's Liara, and I mean, well, that would be pretty exciting, I suppose. I like Liara as a character. She does a great job of being intriguing and possibly has the most plot prevalence on account of the whole Benezia stuff. But I also have the foresight of having played these games before, wherein I usually chose Liara, and so for the sake of personal variety, I opt to have Shepard pursue a relationship with Kaidan. This is ultimately a pretty meaningless choice that the series allows you to change going into the second and third games anyway. I just wanted to bring it up that romance options are a part of the series, and while limited to just Kaidan, Liara, and for male Shepards Ashley, they do grow and change as the series get bigger and more fleshed out. That's two disappointments that Liara has now faced in rapid succession. First I killed her mother, and then I killed her dreams. I'm a little stinker. The whole crew laments the killing of Benezia and believes it best to check up on Liara and make sure she's doing okay. Fortunately, she doesn't hold too much resentment and believes her and Shepard to have simply been involved in a misunderstanding. Liara also tells us that she is sad about Benezia, but ultimately she seems to generally believe that her mother's mind was truly lost to indoctrination. Perhaps in reality Benezia was already dead the moment she lost control of herself, and our meddling barely ended the suffering the real Benezia was dealing with inside. She tells us that she wants to honour her mother's life as a strong and kind woman who truly wanted to stop Saren once. She will grieve, but Liara believes she will be okay. While now would be a natural time to continue the pursuit of Saren in the interest of progressing the story, there is another matter that can be dealt with first. You see, Mass Effect released in the early Xbox 360 era of games, in a post-Horse Armor world. That is to say, there is downloadable content, or DLC, that needs to be discussed. Specifically, the original game released with 2 pieces of DLC in the form of a large and unique mission called Bring Down the Sky, and a combat arena called Pinnacle Station. We'll talk about the latter one first because it's easy. It's not in the Legendary Edition version of the game. Yeah, whoopsie daisy, the devs seemingly deleted all the code for it, and rather than remaking it from scratch, accepted the fact that the piece of DLC just wasn't ever all that engaging. You fight hordes of enemies, Geth, humans, Krogans, whatever, and just keep on killing them until the game tells you you're done. At which point it gives you an apartment to visit which never comes up, or is mentioned again anyway. It does its job as a combat training arena type DLC, and it's not bad, I guess, but it was always just there, and I'm not necessarily lamenting it not making it over to the Legendary Edition. There is a mod that does its best to recreate the original DLC, so if it's that bothersome to you, you can always head over to the Nexus and reacquire it. That's neat, but I didn't use it, so I'm not going to be talking about it too much. The DLC isn't officially in the game, but if you really want to try it out, you can. And it's okay, it's nothing special really. But there is another, and it's pretty good. Bring Down the Sky is a piece of DLC that sees the Normandy approach a large asteroid that is hurtling towards the nearby human colony of Terra Nova at an absurd speed, set to impact the planet in a few hours. The dinosaurs couldn't survive an asteroid impact. I think it's safe to say that this human colony is in extreme peril. So Joker drops Shepard off to investigate. Almost immediately she is contacted by a woman indicating that the asteroid's collision course is the result of foul play, and that there are large engines strapped to the surface that are hurtling it towards the planet. The first task is thusly clear. Disable these engines to stop the approach. Upon arrival at the first fusion torch, the culprits are revealed. Batarians and humans don't get along, that's an understatement really. There's a lot of resentment between the two, and the Batarians in particular have a tendency to do what they can to cause strife. Piracy, slavery, wanton outbursts of violence and cruelty. But attempting to completely destroy a planet in a petty act of vengeance for a war that they started is bafflingly silly. Rest assured, this first group is dispatched and a chap named Simon is unveiled to us. Simon knows the woman who contacted us, Kate, and tells us that evacuating the planet is simply not an option, as well as informing that the reason the engines are here is to move the asteroid into orbit for mining purposes. I don't dislike their original plan, but seeing how it has backfired so tremendously, I think it's pretty safe to say that not only are the miners at risk, but with the whole planet impossible to evacuate within 4 hours, they have made quite a costly mistake. But alas, the second engine is visited, and after making it past some absurdly bothersome proximity mines, we pop in and deal with another Batarian squadron. Shut it down, speak to Kate, and learn that the Batarians are setting up contingencies to blow the asteroid sky high if needs be. We're also introduced to the gentleman in charge of this ragtag crew of ruffians, a bloke named Balak, who it's safe to say is thoroughly displeased at Kate and Shepard's antics. 2 down, 1 to go, hop on in and shut it down. Once inside we meet Balak's second banana, if you will, a man named Chan. As it so happens, Chan isn't too pleased about Balak's shenanigans. Like a 40s German, he says he's only here now as he's following orders, saying that he believes Balak to have more or less lost his mind. After having a friendly chat, I convince Chan that he no longer needs to be Balak's little lapdog. Eliminate Balak, Chan takes command and he can focus on doing things that are a little bit less repulsive than genocide. I hope. With the imminent threat of the engines dealt with, the colony can now rest easy, but with Balak still in command of his lads, there's really no guarantee as to how long that may last. So Shepard heads into the main facility and ooh, this is nice. Anyway, bang bang, pew pew, hello Balak. As Chan forewarned, Balak is a little bit off the deep end and has rigged the facility to explode should we kill him here and now. He blames humanity for all the shortcomings that befell his people since the Skillian Blitz, and he wants his supposed revenge. He wants the colony gone to coax the council into forgiving the Batarians. Refusing to listen to reason or allow himself to be talked down, we are faced with his ultimatum. Let him go and save the miners, or kill him and doom them to die. I don't love letting this guy go, but at the end of the day the colony is safe and the miners' lives are worth infinitely more than any petty vengeance or justice to be taken out on this guy. Besides, the way I see it, he's still probably going to lose like half his guys to Charn's mutiny regardless, so may as well let those events play out and see if Shepard's promise to see him again comes to fruition. Balak leaves the asteroid, Kate and Simon are safe, and the sky shan't be brought down today. Well, I've spoken about the lore, the story, a good few missions, all the crew and companions, and even the DLC, including one that's not even in the version of the game I played. But I haven't spoken about the gameplay very much at all. I went on that whole spiel at the start about character creation and classes and how this and your companions change and have certain actions they can and can't perform, but I just haven't taken the time to just sit down and explain how Mass Effect plays. And the truth of the matter is simple. It's pretty simple. All the footage that has been shown in the background is well and truly an accurate representation of how the game plays. A solid chunk of it is walking around, talking to people and interacting with up to 6 dialogue options. Chat to someone, find out what they know or what they want, probably have a good choice and a bad choice with which to respond. When you're not doing that, you're probably fighting people. This too is pretty simple. Aim gun, shoot baddie, kill baddie, miss baddie, die. You get a few abilities to supplement your gun shooting based on your class. As a Sentinel, I have some abilities to disable enemies and give them a quick shove, and then you get a few extra abilities based on what squad mates you pick. My Shepard is able to use abilities like Throw to unsurprisingly throw enemies, Sabotage to stop enemies from shooting me, Stasis to freeze enemies in place, and other abilities like Lift and Barrier, which are hopefully quite self-explanatory. Shepard also gets a list of abilities labelled as Spectre Training to allow for mid-fight revivals of allies. All abilities can be used by pressing one of the number keys or, I'm guessing, the D-pad on a controller. Abilities are tied to cooldowns, can't use it when it's grey, but as soon as it's available, go buck wild. Allies get abilities, they tend to just use them willy-nilly, and you can just keep shooting and using abilities until the other guy is dead. It's not especially hard, and you can make it a little bit more tactical if you're willing to learn the intricacies, but overall, if running in and firing a lot of bullets doesn't work, staying in cover and waiting for the enemies to approach you likely will. All guns have unlimited ammo and instead rely on an overheating mechanic, so just don't fire 100% of the time and you're probably golden. Yep, well, I think that covers pretty much everything about the gameplay and there's nothing left to talk about, right? Okay, fine, we'll address it. The big thing on everyone's minds when the Legendary Edition was first announced wasn't about the updated visuals, the new coat of paint, or the reliable methods of getting the games running on modern machines. All of these things are great, don't get me wrong, but all of that pales in comparison to the great Mass Effect controversy that is the M35 Mako. Did you know that the Mako has its own Wikipedia page? I don't mean like Mass Effect wiki, I mean an actual genuine, bona fide Wikipedia article. Honestly, I don't know why it does, but the reception segment contains a lot of nuggets of information that really describe a whole lot of the debacle around this thing. Some of my favourite buzzwords here include things like clunky, infamous, wonky, adorably rubbish, complaints that it handles like an ambulance with beach balls for wheels, with the general consensus being that it bogged the game down. But the other word here that I think means more than any negativity thrown this thing's way is one simple word: iconic. I won't mince words. The Mako doesn't control all that well, I know, shock horror at the controversial statement I just made. This thing is flawed. It handles weird, it gets a lot of airtime, it's not especially fast or strong, and compared to other video game space vehicles like the Warthog, it's just not especially exciting to use. The Legendary Edition, bless its little heart, does its best to rectify some of the questionable design choices regarding the Mako and turn it into a more well-rounded and better functioning vehicle, and let me tell you, it does a good job of it. It packs a better punch, it doesn't veer off course at the mildest suggestion of an intermediate strength breeze, and it feels mostly better to drive. But it is still a bit rubbish. It's by no means bad, but the whole thing is still slow, and many of the segments where you're driving, especially in side missions or indeed in Bring Down the Sky itself, showcase an inherent problem with the Mako as an exploration element in the game. It's just not as fun as the talking or the shooting. It is still fun though. Seeing this thing act a bit wacky or not quite land where you expected it is sometimes fantastic, and these segments really do lend themselves to a sense of scale to the galaxy as a whole, as opposed to the small corridors and boxes that tend to constitute the majority of shooting segments in this first game. I personally think the optimal word to use when talking about the Mako is flawed. It's by no means great, but it also won't stab you for the sake of stealing your half-eaten kebab. It's just a bit weird. In fact, I'd probably go as far as to say that the bigger issue isn't necessarily the Mako itself, but more so in the clearly half-baked planet design that leads to the lame, lumpy landscapes lazily littered, liberally layering the Milky Way with haphazard squares of nothingness, interspaced with sharp peaks, terrifying valleys, and the occasional bit of stuff to mess about with before slapping you on the bum and telling you to do it all over again until you find all of the mercury that this planet has to offer. I do not hate the Mako by any means. It serves its purpose, and while it's not perfect, I find that, even in its original bizarre incarnation with its quirky controls, it was fun enough to make some of the least interesting segments of the game more interesting, because I had to wrestle with this infernal contraption. Especially in regards to the Legendary Edition as well, I genuinely think the thing is fine, but it's still rightfully a controversial part of the game that is more or less entirely done away with going forwards, with only limited vehicle segments in Mass Effect 2 as part of a free DLC, and as much of a disappointment as it is to see the thing go, it is probably for the best. But disregarding that thing, the core bit of gameplay with the shooting and the abilities and the guns is all good fun, if not a bit mindless from time to time, but that's okay. The story makes up for any and all shortcomings the gameplay may have, Mako included, and the story continues as, with Terra Nova safe in Balak's Wrath, the hunt for Saren continues on a little planet known as Pharos. The colony of Zoo's Hope on the planet Pharos is under attack by the Geth. As it's guaranteed not to be a coincidence that a planet covered in the ruins of a Prothean city, something Saren is no doubt interested in, is being attacked by the same robots that Saren has been documented as using thus far, it's pretty safe to say that this reeks of Saren. Land down on the planet, squad up, this time taking Tali and what I guess is now my boyfriend Kaidan, and head into the colony proper. Due to an error, there's going to be some instances where I have different squad mates here, as I had a bit of a whoopsie when recording this, so don't worry if you see different characters present. We meet this guy who requests we speak to the colony's leader. Oh, alright, see ya. Fight some Geth and head upstairs past more Geth into the colony, which at this point can really only be described as a bunch of containers in the midst of some ruins. Clearly the Geth are going hard on this place, meaning whatever's here must be of great interest. I offer as much help as possible to the people of the colony to make sure as many of their problems are... Goodness me, more Geth. Oh, where was I? Ah yes, we make sure as many of their burdens are shouldered by Shepard as is possible, including scaring off a Geth ship so that Joker can drop off the Mako. Great. With our abilities to explore now unimpeded under threat of violence, Shepard and the gang get to work on restoring power, dispatching even more Geth, getting water to the colonists, and acquiring meat. As a brief aside, these little animals are Varen. They show up throughout the series, and they're basically space dogs. They have the capability to be good boys, but I want it to be abundantly clear that these specific Varen are bad boys, so do not feel bad about me shooting them. With the colonists no longer on the brink of death, and many of their immediate issues solved, their de facto leader informs us of a company on the planet called Exogeny that hosted their R&D labs to perform various experiments on this planet. Saren clearly has an interest in scientific experiments if our run with the Rachni is anything to go off of, so we hop in the Mako and drive over to their headquarters, dispatching a large quantity of Geth along the way. Upon arrival, we stumble into a room full of Exogeny personnel, including the rather shady executive Ethan, and a woman looking for her daughter somewhere deeper in the facility. We chat to everyone here, find out all the info we can, and get going to the next area. Once here, we run into an Exogeny employee who tries to do us in. She's the daughter of the one we just met, and once she realizes we're not robots with giant flashlight heads, she immediately seeks our help. As it would seem, Exogeny's research led to them studying something called the Thorian, a native species to Pharos that the Geth are seemingly interested in. In addition to a clear goal, she hands us her ID card to open the doors, and we head off to see if any other survivors are in the Exogeny offices. As it turns out, we encounter yet another Krogan working for Saren. He sure seems to have a lot of these guys, and he is greatly struggling speaking to a VI. Thanks to the ID card we were given, the VI is more than willing to cooperate with us and gives the troubling news that the colony of Zoo's Hope is in fact located above the Thorian. More troublingly, the VI tells us in no uncertain terms that the Thorian is capable of controlling the minds of sentient life, humans included, not too dissimilar to the indoctrination that affected Benezia. And just in case all that wasn't bad enough, almost all of the colonists are infected with the Thorian spores. They're all effectively zombies to its wicked whims, and Exogeny was not only privy to this information, but were actively endorsing it for scientific study. Being unable to contact Joker to get the Normandy to safety or to send anyone else to assist the colonists or find the Thorian, The only solution is to stop the signal jamming equipment set up by the Geth. After gunning down a few hordes of robots and making our way into the upper echelons of the office, we solve a brief puzzle and set the Geth ship careening down to the surface and reopening communications with the Normandy. While there are still a bunch of Geth wandering about, access to the colony is now once again open to us, and it's time to head back on over and find this Thorian. There is just one little issue with that, however. We swing by and pick up Lisbeth back to take her to her mother, but on arrival, find that Ethan has well and truly lost it. Threatening everyone and clearly in distress about something, he claims that Exogeny intends to purge the colony. Ethan is panicked, frenzied rather, and wildly waving around a pistol looking to secure his own safety. Yeah, at no point does this man actually pull out a pistol. I do not know what I'm talking about here. He's just pointing angrily. So ignore the pistol bit, but the rest of it still stands. While shooting him would be an easy solution to this, let's be honest, talking this wacko down is the logical solution. Convince him that Feros can use the whole Geth attack as a clever marketing ploy and devise a plan for the whole Thorian situation. They're infected with spores, so the theory goes that destroying the Thorian itself should, hopefully, free them of their plight. Lisbeth and her mother believe that a specialised nerve gas containing insecticide would be able to effectively paralyse the colonists and keep them from, being shot to death. Sure enough, the gas seems to do its job at stopping the colonists from attacking, and we are able to evade them, making our way beneath the colony to where the Thorian is located. As it would seem, the Thorian has made a few extra friends in addition to the colonists, and good lord, that's nasty. Anyway, these are Sari clones it's birthing? Informed that the Thorian made a deal with Saren to help him pursue those who are gone. Saren, predictably, did not uphold his end of the bargain, and now the Thorian is thoroughly displeased at the meddling of others. It does everything in its power to stop us, birthing more and more things to try and stop us from getting higher up and shooting its sacks. Man, this is just yucky. We make our way to the top where we're able to dislodge the Thorian from its perch and send it plummeting to its doom. With it gone, the Asari who had been cloned by it is released, revealing her to be named Shyala, one of Benezia's goons. Shyala confirms that Benezia was indoctrinated and that she herself was under his spell for a while too, with Saren ultimately sacrificing her to gain the Thorian's knowledge. The Thorian's knowledge is called the Cipher, something that will allow its wielder to truly comprehend the visions given by the beacon. The cipher is not a physical object, it's more of an echo, I guess? An echo of the Prothean culture that once covered Feros that is essentially leaked down to the Thorian, allowing it to understand their ways. This, in turn, echoes to those infected by the Thorian, with Shyala now possessing the knowledge of the cipher and, in turn, echoing it onto Shepard.
Open yourself to the universe, Commander. Embrace eternity.
Shyala tells us that she wishes to stay and help the colonists who suffered at the Thorian's hands, having renounced any prior connection she had to Saren. With the money coming in from Ethan's new marketing scheme I handed to him on a silver platter, Zeus Hope is now able to safely recover from the damage caused by Exogeny, the Thorian, Sarian and the Geth, and we have the cipher. With Liara's mind-melding meddling to help us peer-review the visions granted by the beacon, we are able to piece together a little bit of information. Unfortunately, it's not quite enough to know everything that we need about the conduit. Saren is still one step ahead of us, but after a brief communique with the Council, we are to understand that a Solarian recon team investigating Saren sent a message, but all that was received was static. Assuming that it must have been critical information, Shepard is sent to investigate. First, let's clean up and talk about a few of those side quests, shall we? Mass Effect assignments. The highlights. Old Unhappy Far Off Things is a quest that sees Shepard interact with a gentleman named Zabaleta who knows Shepard's mother. This is available because I chose the Spacer background. Chat to the man, he wants some money, I call up Mother Dearest who confirms she does know the man and that he is suffering with PTSD, so I convince him to seek help. The Fan is a quest where I speak to a superfan named Conrad Werner on a few separate occasions. Each time his requests get more and more ludicrous, with his first interaction requesting an autograph for his wife. The second time he hopes for a photograph with Shepard, and the third and final time he's requesting that Shepard put his name forward to be a spectre. Naturally, I convince him that this is a really profoundly stupid idea, and he should just stay at home with his wife because that is insane. Thankfully, I'm sure he'll listen and never cause a problem ever again going forwards. UNC Rogue VI is a quest where I go to the moon, the Earth moon, and fight a, you guessed it, Rogue VI. It's actually a pretty tough combat encounter that rewards a specialization class for Shepard that basically makes you super duper strong. Beyond that, it's pretty unremarkable in terms of the first game, but I'm sure people will be upset if I don't mention this one, so consider it mentioned. UNC Missing Marines is a quest that I feel will also get chastised for not mentioning. This is actually more of a quest line, and it first features landing down to find the titular missing Marines, fighting a giant worm called a Threshermaw, and concluding that a transmitter found here likely led the Marines to their deaths. This directly leads into UNC Cerberus, which those of you familiar with Mass Effect may have perked your ears up at hearing. This quest is largely unremarkable: go to planet, fight baddies, 3 groups of baddies. What is interesting is that these Cerberus people seem to somehow have obtained some of the Thorian's thralls, and some Rachni. How peculiar. Once all the bases are cleared, you find the body of the Alliance Admiral who had given you these quests, leading directly into UNC Hades Dogs. Get it? Cerberus Hades Dogs. It's cute. Go to planet, enter base, fight Cerberus. This is a pretty tough fight, but once it's over it is simple enough to acquire some data. Upon returning to the ship, an agent of the Shadow Broker contacts us. Remember the Shadow Broker? And we were informed that the Admiral, rest in peace, was going to sell this data on Cerberus to them. We declined to follow through, naturally, and proceed with our business as usual. And that's it, questline done. I'm gonna forego commenting much on these other than just giving a cheeky little grin and saying that I like this questline, simple as it may be, because foreshadowing is fun. Cerberus is an organisation that we will talk much more about when the time is right. Much like the Rogue VI quest, I figured I owe it to the writers to just mention it here and move on. These things have been mentioned, and that is cool. While we're at it, UNC Dead Scientist is a quest that also references these Cerberus people, and completing it changes some dialogue stuff. It's a similar go into locations and deal with enemies situation pretty quick and just provides some more insight into who Cerberus are. UNC Hostile Takeover is a quest that is mostly unremarkable, but I just want to give it a shout out as a quest that you actually get Renegade points just for accepting. Instead, declining the initial offer will give you Paragon points. That's interesting, they never really do it again, but I think I'll bring it up because that's just something different. UNC Asari Diplomacy is a quest that involves settling a feud between an Asari and her sister. There are technically a few different ways to do this based on how you stumble onto the quest, but it's a pretty neat one where you get to deduce that the woman who gave you the quest is trying to manipulate you into killing her sister. It's not half bad. UNC Major Kyle has you take down a cult led by a man named, well, Major Kyle. It's got some major parallels to the book Heart of Darkness, the idea is generally just pretty neat, and I kinda like quests that involve dealing with wacky cults. UNC Besieged Base is a quest only available to people with high Paragon scores, such as my Shepard. A group of dangerous biotics have drugged researchers on a medical station and taken them hostage. As a Paragon, you are specifically selected to minimize innocent casualties. This quest kinda isn't very good actually. The whole point is to try and do it with 0 scientists killed, a feat I nonetheless accomplished, but it's just such a pain and not especially rewarding. I like the idea, just not the execution. UNC Negotiation is one I won't really mention at all. This is the quest for Renegades, so I didn't do it, but I figured I'd mention it as a highlight because it's technically a super special quest for super special people. A bizarre chap is threatening the Alliance, Shepard is sending to deal with him. The dude is sexist, insulting, overall not nice, and generally entices you to shoot him in the face. You can choose a Paragon option to deal with him, and I think I like this quest more than the Paragon one because the guy's pretty funny. That said, my Shepard never did this one, I just wanted to shout it out. UNC Espionage Probe is a quest where you go into a mine and stumble into a trap that involves disabling a powerful explosive device. It's generally just a pretty neat quest because you end up meeting a Turian pirate who is the mastermind behind the Skillian Blitz, leading to the conflict between the humans and Batarians. I only mention this one as I have a bit of a soft spot for it. I just kinda like it, even though I wish the events of it were ever really mentioned again. Also, the original version hilariously accidentally made the pirate a human, which is really weird considering his dialogue. And that's it. A ragtag bunch of various side quests / assignments that I think are noteworthy. There's a plethora of other ones, but a lot of them are just go to planet, drive Mako, enter location, kill baddies. Heck, even most of these are exactly that order of events. But these just have some neato stories accompanying them. The only other thing I think I want to mention in regards to assignments is a man named Admiral Hackett. Like, 80% of all the side quests will involve a brief dialogue from this man, and he's not really important yet, but just like the Rogue VI and the Cerberus stuff, I just want to mention him, okay? He's not important to the first game, none of these things are really, but they are mentioned. I have mentioned them, and now we're moving on to the main quest with little to no distractions left as we hurtle towards the finale at breakneck speeds. The Solarian recon team mentioned prior is on a planet called Virmire, a pretty innocent seeming tropical planet full of oceans, pleasant islands with luxurious beaches, and a secret evil research base funded and operated by Saren. Think of it like Epstein Island, but with less, scuba diving. Touching down on the planet, driving our favourite little vehicle over towards the Solarians and taking out all the Geth along the way, we rendezvous and get the details on what's happening out here. The Solarian leader, Captain Kirahei, explains that this is some sort of research facility owned by Saren. More troublesome than that, however, is that his primary research seems to be focused on breeding the Krogan.
How is that possible?
Well, Wrex, I don't know, but whatever Saren's up to is established as no good. With the Krogan army at his back, Saren is going to be unstoppable, taking over the galaxy at an absurd pace. It's clear that Saren's cure for the genophage isn't necessarily a good thing, and despite Rex's protests, the issue has to be dealt with. To say that Wrex is fuming is an understatement. He's utterly miffed. I don't even disagree with him that Saren's cure could be a good thing, but talking to Wrex, he is eventually willing to contend that Shepard is his friend, and that Saren's new Krogan aren't the future of his species. They are a weapon Saren is moulding to his will. Wrex isn't happy, maybe even sad, but he stands down without a fight. But he doesn't have to. I like this moment in the game because the reason Wrex stood down is that I had previously acquired his family armor. You can also talk him down through persuading him from either being a high enough Paragon or Renegade, but you can also just not talk him down. Whether you are unsuccessful in your attempts or even more brazenly willing to just off him without a care if the game allows it, you can just straight up kill one of your companions, one of Shepard's friends, because it's the easy option. Or even more horrifyingly, if you're indecisive enough when talking to Wrex, he is instead shot in the back by Ashley. Goodness. I've said my piece about Ashley and I don't approve of this decision, and neither does Kaidan, but fortunately none of this happened to my Wrex. My Wrex stood down and understood the issues at hand, that stopping Saren was imperative above all else. The next issue, then, is what Kirahei informs us of. The Solarians intend to destroy the base with a large explosive.
Crude, but effective.
Pretty much intending to plop down a nuke in the middle and get out. I pawn off Ashley to Kirahei's command since he needs some assistance, and after a very inspiring speech...
You all know the mission and what is at stake. I have come to trust each of you with my life, but I have also heard murmurs of discontent. I share your concerns. We are trained for espionage. We would be legends, but the records are sealed. Glory in battle is not our way. Think of our heroes. A silent step who defeated a nation with a single shot. Or the ever-alert who kept armies at bay with hidden facts. These giants do not seem to give us solace here, but they are not all that we are. Before the network, there was the fleet. Before diplomacy, there were soldiers. Our influence stopped the Rachni, but before that, we held the line. Our influence stopped the Krogan, but before that, we held the line. Our influence will stop Saren. In the battle today, we will hold the line. Good luck, Commander. I hope we will meet again.
Shepard, Kaidan and Wrex push forward to disable the defences and clear the path as much as possible for Kirahei, Ashley and the Solarians. Once inside, we discover that some of the captain's lost men have been indoctrinated just like Benezia and Shiala, and many other survivors are still imprisoned. We make sure to free everyone we can and head further into the facility. As upsetting as it is, we destroy the Krogan cloning or birthing or whatever station this is, and we meet an Asari woman who states no loyalty to Saren. She gives us all the information she has on Saren and her research, including a bit of information on how and why exactly Saren's ship, Sovereign, is able to indoctrinate people. Like the Solarians, we let her go and head off to the next bit of the facility where we find Sovereign. The Reapers are real. They destroyed the Protheans 50,000 years ago. They are advanced, they are powerful, and Sovereign? Sovereign is a Reaper.
I am beyond your comprehension. I am Sovereign.
Yes, thank you, Sovereign. You see...
You exist because we allow it, and you will end because we demand it.
Well, after that cheery discussion, Sovereign suggested something called the Cycle, and it is close. It and the Reapers constructed the relays. Not the Protheans, the Reapers gave societies the chance to develop, and then they destroyed all of the societies. The Protheans, the races that preceded them that Liara theorized, and the cycle begins anew. Human, Asari, Turian, Krogan, all. The Reapers are coming, and Saren intends to kickstart the cycle here and now. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Joker informs us that Sovereign is on the move, going towards the Normandy at a rapid pace. Everyone is in agreement. The bomb needs to be armed now, Saren and Sovereign need to be stopped. But it's never that easy. Joker plonks the bomb down in a small waterway on what I assume to be a hydroelectric facility. Kaidan gets to work on arming it when Ashley radios in that she is pinned down by some Geth. I swap out Kaidan for Garrus and head on up to rescue her. We manage to make it about halfway, but now Kaidan is under attack too. They're both pinned down with low odds of survival, and Shepard, I, am once again forced into making a choice. Do I rescue Kaidan, or do I rescue Ashley? Putting aside all personal biases where possible, ignoring my thoughts on Ashley, I think there is, regrettably, a logical choice here. Kaidan has the bomb, and that is the objective. But even that is muddied by Saren's interference. With just about everything going wrong at every step of this mission, this should not come as a surprise. Saren is greatly displeased with what we're doing. He intends to bring about the Reapers, believing that siding with them will allow him to utilize their technology to propel a new age of evolution. So, he's clearly indoctrinated, right? Attempts to talk him down are fruitless. We should take the opportunity to take Saren down now. We throw everything we have at him, and while he has the upper hand in the end, the threat of the bomb's detonation scares him off. Joker swoops in at the last Shepard and rescues Shepard, Garrus, Wrex and Kaidan, with hopefully just enough time to... Hang on! Kaidan is distraught at the choice that was made. Survivor's guilt. Reiterating that Saren is to blame gets him to focus back on the task for now, but Ashley's absence is noted. Before, Saren's destruction was always prevalent, but it was to randies, to nobodies, people Shepard and more importantly the player didn't really know. Sure, violence is bad, but it can be hard to empathise at times when his destruction is so rampant and chaotic. But to lose a member of our crew in a way that is utterly unavoidable? Disregard that she was my least favourite of the bunch, she was there from the beginning and that makes the choice hurt. I said it already that I think Mass Effect's handling of a morality system is fantastic. Any time the game gives you that risk of losing a crew member, those are the choices that make you feel it the most. And I want to reiterate on one thing I said there. Unavoidable. This choice cannot be circumvented. There's no loophole to save everyone. I could save Wrex, sure, but the game always boils down to a choice no matter what. Do I rescue Kaidan, or do I rescue Ashley? I chose Kaidan. Was it the right choice? Well, that's up for debate. Was it biased? I like to believe it wasn't, but it probably was. I made the choices that Shepard would be dating Kaidan. I made up my mind that Ashley's personality wasn't to my taste. I made the choice that I would save Kaidan and argue that it was purely logical. It probably wasn't. I don't know for certain that it was or wasn't, but it probably wasn't. Ashley is dead. That was my decision. So my next decision? Avenge her. Liara Jimmy Neutron brain blasts us once more, decoding the visions we've received from the beacon and from Sovereign. We are to use the Mu relay, head to a planet named Ilos, where the conduit is located. All of the information points there, but it's not exactly safe. The Alliance are barred from heading there. so it seems wise to get some reinforcements from the Council before heading out. We tell the Council all about the Reapers, but they wave it off as speculative nonsense, believing that Saren manufactured this Reaper threat to manipulate Shepard into making a rash decision. The Council are unwise in this, but they ultimately leave the decision to us. If we genuinely believe Sovereign to be the larger threat than Saren, then we are allowed to focus our attention on it. Joker and Kaidan are especially broken up about everything that happened on Virmire. Kirahi is on board our ship currently too, and makes it a note that he and his men will honour Ashley's death. Wrex is fuming, Liara is exhausted, tensions are all around high. With everyone eager to head to Ilos, we are informed that Udina, the human ambassador, is personally aiding in the assembly of a massive fleet of reinforcements and requested our immediate return to the Citadel to seek as much aid as we can muster. But they don't intend to go through the relay. Ilos is in an area known as the Terminus system that is off limits to the Citadel. They're not allowed to go there without risking war with the Batarians or maybe even drawing the attention of the Geth. While their caution is understandable, the Council doesn't know about the Reapers. Shepard knows that Ilos is the only way to stop Saren and makes it clear that she intends to go regardless of their permission. Udina blocks the Normandy's systems, locking the ship at the Citadel and effectively detaining Shepard to be grounded in her room like a spoiled brat. While venting some frustration, Kaidan approaches Shepard and the two of them are interrupted by Joker. Phew, I was worried things were going to get a bit too saucy for a second. Thankfully, Joker's message is of vital import. Captain Anderson, the Normandy's previous owner and someone I've talked about regretfully little so far, wants to meet with us. On our way we finish a few new side quests, help a woman make a choice regarding her child, verbally smack down some racists, do a little jig, the usual business. We meet Anderson at a local pub, and the two discuss their frustrations at the Council's and Udina's decision. Luckily, Anderson believes us about the Reapers and devises a plan to mutiny against the Council, steal the ship by undermining the Ambassador's commands, and rush off to Ilos with our crew. Anderson is putting himself at a lot of risk, both politically and perhaps even physically, effectively committing treason for the sake of getting us on board our ship. We suggest a more subtle approach of specifically undermining Udina rather than put the captain at any more risk than is necessary, and the crew makes sure to rendezvous back on the Normandy. Unfortunately for Anderson, Udina is at his desk, so Anderson gives him a little bit of the old 1-2 before undocking the Normandy. We escape, leaving the Citadel as wanted criminals with Ilos in our sights. The crew is surprisingly unconflicted about the whole ordeal. Joker is disappointed that the Citadel didn't send any pursuers after us, making his job too easy. Shakwa is worried the crew is generally in a bit of a shambles, but they've unanimously decided they are loyal to Shepard. And hey, at least Tali's having fun.
Very exciting, Shepard.
With nowhere left to go and the law hot on our heels, the task ahead is clear. Find the conduit and stop Saren. The Normandy is going to Ilos. As we approach, Kaidan decides that now is as good a time as any to go all the way. There are rules against fraternization, but I mean, let's not kid ourselves, that's pretty low down on the list of laws we've broken today. The game got in a lot of hot water over this, like an absurd amount of trouble for the mere suggestion of two consenting adults going to town like that. While there are themes of nudity, the game mercifully keeps a lot of stuff off screen and fades to black before things go crazy. So if you want, just close your eyes and imagine what may have happened. And if you'd rather not think about that, then fret not because the game jumps us right into the next problem. The planet is surrounded by Geth ships, a good indication that Saren is here. The drop zone Presley found is absurdly dangerous and absurdly precise. It's like riding a bicycle in London. It's risky, but the best of the best can pull it off. Joker assures us he is that guy. The Mako comes flying out and lands down in precisely the right spot, and with our Prothean expert and our Geth expert on our sides, it's time to pursue Saren and find that conduit. I won't pretend like Ilos doesn't present a good few difficult encounters, but I'll also not pretend that I especially believe it to be much more difficult than Virmire was. It's tough going to pursue Saren here, but we continue nonetheless, and encounter a strange hologram. Tali and Liara claim they cannot understand the message it speaks, but Shepard has ingested so much Prothean language throughout this journey that she can make out parts of what it says. The Reapers, the Citadel, the Conduit. It's hard to make out what it says, but its frantic worry helps to reiterate that we are on the right track. We progress in chasing Saren some more, this time we're utilising the Mako, before being locked off by large barriers that funnel us down into a side tunnel. Whatever it is that has locked us off presents us with the only way to go, and since it didn't affect Saren, Tali logically concludes that this probably means it's not an automatic trap. As a matter of fact, it's the hologram from before, Vigil. an ancient VI created by the Protheans. Okay, so I need to be completely honest on this one. I tried a few different concepts to try and make this section look even halfway decent, but truth be told, the visual effects that are emitted from this VI are just really harsh. Bearing in mind that this was recorded on the unpatched version of the game, I don't know what exactly the visual effects will look like as of now, but they're so harsh that I've had to increase the brightness massively whenever it's on screen to try and minimise the problem. Much like the whole issue with the Pinnacle Station DLC from before, there is a mod that claims to fix the visual effects in this scene, so I highly recommend that if you find the effects to be as bothersome as I do, go look into that. And in addition, I've done what I can to minimise the time that it is visible on screen by cutting to somewhat related footage to try and mitigate it. Sorry about this, and I hope it does not detract too badly from this chapter. In addition to greatly hurting my eyes to look at it, it informs us that the Reaper's ultimate goal is indeed the cycle Sovereign mentioned. The Reapers are in dark space, the large gaps between the galaxies, dormant and waiting. Sovereign is here to bring them through to the galaxy and begin their galactic purge. To do so, it needs to attach itself to the Citadel, which is a gigantic and secretive Mass Effect relay that connects to this dark space. The seat of the galactic government, the home to millions of people, is the first ultimate goal of Sovereign, to cause the same destruction that befell the Protheans. Extinction. Ilos, Vigil reveals, is the location of a top-secret Prothean project. The Protheans managed to create a small-scale relay that will send people directly to the Citadel. Saren intends to use this to immediately teleport his Geth army to the Citadel and instantly begin his assault to weaken it, ready for Sovereign's arrival. But Ilos was also intended to serve as a stasis facility for surviving Protheans. But over the years the facility has lost more and more power, with almost all of the pods being shut down until the only thing that remained was Vigil, and a dozen Prothean scientists. With too few to sustain a population, these Protheans focused their attention on finding a way to break the cycle forever. The Keepers, the same mantis creatures we helped that guy investigate before, respond to a signal that would have made them open the Citadel's relay to the Reapers and begin the invasion. Those Prothean scientists, those few that remained, altered the signal. The only reason Sovereign has had to rely on Saren's help is because of the valiant work of those Protheans to spend their last days ensuring that the Reapers would be held back for as long as possible. But that would all be for naught if Saren's plan works. That means the clock is ticking even faster now. Saren has to be stopped immediately, and Vigil gives us the means to override the Citadel's controls to lock off Sovereign from accessing the relay. Unfortunately for Liara, Vigil doesn't have much information on the Protheans beyond what it has told us, but it and the people it had protected have at least given one last hope for the galaxy: Commander Saoirse Shepard. It is wartime. The Citadel is under attack, from the inside by Saren, and from the outside by Sovereign, and from all sides by his Geth army. It's a race against the clock, and the Citadel is frankly unprepared for this kind of attack. A gigantic Asari ship, the Destiny Ascension, sends out word to evacuate the Council onto their ship. Just as Shepard and the gang arrive, come bursting through the conduit to arrive at the Citadel. After making a right mess of the place and thankfully leaving the Mako behind, the crew begin to make their way up the tower in the Presidium towards the Council's chambers, the same way Saren is seemingly headed. Saren is still one step ahead, however, and while the Citadel is doing what it can to fight off the incoming Geth ships, they are powerless to do anything once Sovereign arrives. Just too soon for them to snap shut the gaping maw of the Citadel. Sovereign begins to Sovereign connects with the top of the tower Shepard is currently on, and her elevator is stopped. Oh well, we're already this far, might as well see it through to the end. Time to just straight up walk up the side of the tower, I guess, why not? We use some turrets to shoot down some of the Geth ships that made it inside, defeating wave after wave of incoming robots as we progress up the tower further and further to try and reach Saren before Sovereign is able to summon the Reapers. Entering the Council chambers, he stood at the very same place our journey truly began, the same place Commander Shepard became the first human Spectre, watching his handiwork come to fruition. Saren claims to have been given some upgrades by Sovereign after his encounter with Shepard on Vermeer. He makes it clear that he truly believes that he is not indoctrinated, he is simply evolved. Obviously, he is very much indoctrinated. but I can't deny that he is somewhat idealistic in his vision of unity between man and machine. He clearly believes that he's right, but Sovereign is twisting his mind, and Shepard knows this, but he's unable to listen. Out of options, Saren accepts that he was wrong, and realises there is only one thing he can do to try and slow Sovereign down.
Goodbye, Shepard. Thank you.
With Saren out of the way, we try and do what we can to stop Sovereign and manage to patch through to the Destiny Ascension with the Council on board. Joker is sat with a large human fleet ready and waiting for the chance to head on over to the Citadel and try and save the Council, but to do so he will need the arms of the Citadel open. While many human ships and soldiers may fall, the Council, in spite of their inability to listen to Shepard's warnings about the Reapers, are the governing body of the Citadel. Saving them is for the best, no matter the consequences. As the Citadel's arms open up, the ships, Destiny Ascension included, are able to focus fire on Sovereign. Tali and Liara hop down to check that Saren is actually dead, making sure to give him the old double tap. Unfortunately, Sovereign's upgrades were especially effective. After a bothersomely quick and easy boss battle against Saren 2.0, we get a glimpse of how things are going outside. That is to say, poorly. Saren is dead, for real this time. He turned into goo and everything. And Sovereign is greatly weakened, losing its grip on the Citadel and floating helplessly like a turtle on its back. The whole Alliance fleet opens fire on Sovereign, blasting it with everything they've got until the Reaper goes boom. Shepard gets hit by a bit of Sovereign debris, but barring a few scrapes and bruises, everyone seems to be doing just okay. Anderson finds them all alive and well in the Council's chambers, with Shepard making a slightly awkward grand entrance for some reason. The Council, eternally grateful to the Alliance, to Shepard and to Anderson for everything that happened, assemble with us and Urdnot to discuss what happens next. First and foremost, Shepard is forgiven for stealing the Normandy, that's no biggie. Secondly, the Council is opening up a fourth slot, inviting humanity to the Council to commemorate how vital and important they were in this whole palaver. With Shepard now being considered a bit of a big deal, the Council asks for Shepard's suggestion on a candidate for the Council. I controversially nominate Anderson over Urdnot, as I mostly find Urdnot quite slimy, and to be honest I'm not the biggest fan of him over how he handled the whole detaining of my ship thing. As Shepard says, Anderson is a great leader, and someone with military experience would be beneficial for the Council. With Sovereign gone, however, that merely slows down the Reapers. They will still come, and Shepard knows this, so she leaves. With the Council and humanity at her back, she assembles her crew and heads off into the galaxy to prepare as much as possible against the impending threat of the Reapers. Not just for herself, or for humanity, but for the galaxy. And that is Mass Effect. Yeah. The game has concluded and leaves itself very much open and ready for its sequels to continue Commander Shepard's journey. If my excessively long preamble at the start of this whole shebang didn't make it abundantly clear, Mass Effect is one of my favourite franchises, and while the first game's gameplay hasn't aged necessarily as gracefully as many may have liked, I just think everything about this game is really, really neato. Character creation, the opening, the lore, the story and stakes, companions and characters, the DLC, the villains, the expansive galaxy full of exploration, all of its unique concepts, and the music that has been softly playing in your earholes this whole video, are all there to supplement the gameplay to make a game that is truly incredible, awe-inspiring, and fantastic to play. A game that I hold near and dear to my heart as one of my all-time favourites. Mass Effect really does earn that title of being well and truly legendary. And that's not even all. The thing that truly makes Mass Effect special are its sequels.